Oh, it's pretty rainy. Let me get the umbrella. Hello. Happy Tuesday to you. Just one sec, bringing the dog back in. The dog hates the rain, so I'm just going to take the dog out, but it's raining, so she doesn't want to stay out there. So let's see. The dog will start whimpering if she really needs to go to the bathroom, so hopefully she'll be okay. Hi, Sam. How you doing? Hey, everybody. Let me take off my silly hat here. Oh, boy. I got to tell you, I don't know about you all, but I go through these back and forths where sometimes I have my crap together, and other times I can't seem to get my footing. It's like I always call it like trying to climb a greased flagpole, right? I don't know why that is about life. Maybe my head is just messed up. I think I have some combination of ADHD and some kind of mood swing, bipolar shit or whatever it is. Maybe there's some drug that somebody can give me that'll make a difference. But I've tried different things through the VA over the years, and I don't know. I guess we're all messed up to some point, right? But if we're going to keep it real, you got to keep it real, right? I mean, it's so funny. I see all these influencers, like people on Instagram, and they try to make their life look like they have it all together and they're living, and maybe they do. Maybe they have a perfect life, but I've never experienced that. I don't know about you all. There's always something floating through my head that makes me a little bit, hey, how's it going? So yeah, I mean, I think if we're going to keep it real, right? I mean, maybe there's some of you out there that sort of feel, even keeled all the time and life is just Jim dandy. I know a lot of people in America right now are really struggling. And they're trying to keep their head up, and let's keep it relative, right? What Americans go through is nothing like what people in Gaza or elsewhere go through, right? We have what I call first world problems, or I hate that term, but our problems are, oh my God, I can't make the payments on the Mercedes, what am I going to do? um, you get the point, though. I mean, we're not like literally can't have drinking water. So we worry a lot, and I'm right there with everybody. I worry a lot too about financial insecurity, or relationships, the same thing everybody else, what's going to happen? Am I going to die soon? That kind of stuff. But, 95% of the worrying we do probably is not merited. Like if things will work out okay, like we're going to make it through the next day. I remember when I was told I had to go to the Gulf War. I can't tell you the mental stress that caused me knowing that I was hit. It's like anything else. The fear of being somewhere is worse than actually being there, right? Because all these scenarios start to play out in your head. What if I get my arm blown off or whatever the hell? But none of it came to be, right? So same thing here. I was telling people about getting onto social media. I wasn't scared to death. I was just very reluctant because I thought, and I swear, I'm not being dishonest. And thankfully, I was wrong. But I literally thought no one would listen to me. Like I thought I'm gonna, because I see all these other good content creators out there. There's a lot of people that do slick videos, or they're way more experienced and stuff. And anyway, there's a million reasons to be reluctant to do stuff, right? But so be it. Here's a piece of good news. So I announced about, I guess, a week ago on one of my lives that if anybody needed a place to stay to go to the January 13th protest, that I lived about an hour away, and I'd be happy to. Hey, Tommy, thanks for your support. I told people that, hey, if you want a place to stay, and somebody took me up on it, which is really cool. So they're going to be coming in Friday night, and I used to be an Uber driver, or still do part time. So I'm picking that person up from the airport, so I'm kind of helping them through the process, which is kind of fun. It's nice. Listen, this is the mutual aid we're going to have to do to kind of offer to help each other, because, if we don't help each other, we can't just be helping ourselves, right? This is not me to preach to you. You do whatever the hell you want. But in terms of life in general, it's like, if, and you don't have to do it with a lot of people, right? You can just pick one thing to do. Like you don't have to save the whole world. But think of it this way: if everybody just took one other person to care for, and someone else cared for you, we wouldn't be in any of these problems, right? None of these problems would exist. We wouldn't feel badly about ourselves. We'd be in community, and you get out of your head, right? When you're not by yourself, you're just doing stuff and you're kind of outside your head, right? That's why going to work, like at an office, is so important, because even though, it's not fun to make the commute, it's there's something about being around other people. Now, again, some people piss you off, right? So if you hate your workplace, you may think, I can't stand going there. But believe it or not, just going there and being around people is actually better than not. I know it sounds crazy, but it is what it is. We're wired to be together. And unfortunately, I spend a lot of my time by myself. So I'm actually looking forward to this person coming here. even though, I got to tell you, I have to warn this person too. I should have said this because it's a female. I'm a bachelor, right? And most men don't take a lot of time. I've never decorated my apartment. I've done it in the past. I have all these decorations. Like, I just didn't do it this time. When I moved, I'm like, no, it doesn't matter to me, right? Now, there are women who will come into a place like mine and go, holy shit, this place needs a woman's touch. I would agree with 100%. And the other thing is about making plans. I'm the worst person in the world to like make social plans. I'm great if I'm in a relationship and somebody else can do that stuff, I'll go along. I'll do anything. Like I'll go to even the musicals, which I hate, but I'll go just to be, a supportive partner. But as far as making plans, no, I'm terrible. Like I do the same shit over and over again. I'm like a creature of habit. So I don't know if any of you are like that. I mean, there's all sorts of different people. Like what Quinn does, for example, the way Quinn lives. I mean, I don't think I could ever do that. I need an anchor, right? Quinn's like just go, 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 right? He'll just go out and travel from place to place with not a care in the world, and live off of whatever savings he has, and that would stress me out to no end. I'd be like, oh my god. And maybe if I just did it, I wouldn't feel that way. And I usually enjoy travel when I actually do it. It's like, but again, I must have something in my brain that is very. It's like a governor that slows me down. I don't know. I accidentally switched apps. So everyone's different, right? That's why it's so cool to meet different people. And if you can be friends with people who are different than you, you can learn things as well as go places. Tina says, "Come travel with me." Yeah, I'm down. I mean, even if it's just as friends or whatever, that'd be cool, right? So it's kind of weird going by yourself. I've done it before, actually. I went to Costa Rica by myself, which was really cool. I really enjoyed it. And where else have I gone by myself? I've gone places just in my region, East Coast of the United States. I like to hike a lot. I'm more of a cold weather guy, but I can't be on the beach because I'm very fair skinned. If I took off my shirt, which I'm not going to do, don't worry. But if you saw me in a Speedo, you'd like, oh, dude, you need to get suntan because I used to play golf or still do once in a while. And you get that golfer's tan where your arms are tan and your neck, but everything else is bright white. It's a very strange look. In fact, if you watch the PGA golfers, when they take their hat off, their forehead is bright white, but the rest of their face, because they always wear their hat when they're playing. So just weird stuff. Anyway, I think travel's pretty cool. I mean, imagine this. I have mixed feelings about it for two reasons. So one, we're very spoiled here, right? So if I was going to spend, I don't know, $1,200 to go on a trip somewhere, let's say to Thailand or something like that, probably more than that. That money could probably do a lot more to help somebody who's less fortunate, right? Than me, indulging myself in that particular thing. I mean, it's cool to see stuff, right? And it's very good to, I have traveled when I was younger, which is really helpful to kind of round out your view of things. Because let's face it, a lot of people, especially in America, they never go anywhere. And so if you're plied with pro-American, very, very narrow stuff and you don't travel, you don't get a different viewpoint. And a lot of times when you travel, it's kind of humbling, right? I mean, you kind of realize that we're not it after all. People don't believe that we're the be all end all of life, which Americans are told from birth that we're the greatest, we're the best country. Everything should be our way. Everyone else is sort of, they're the ones that are not figured it out yet. And, obviously that's not true. But in fact, people will say when they, it's very easy to spot most Americans. I've had taxi drivers tell me this in other countries. They say Americans are the ones that are overweight, loud, very opinionated, and not too shy to share their opinion with you. So they're easy to spot, right? And in some cases, it's really offensive because not every culture wants you to start blurting out, all this stuff. You need to take it a little more, ease up a little bit, So yeah, we stand out with a sore thumb. Not everybody, but I don't have a huge pot belly, right? But a lot of Americans, because the food environment's so bad, if you just go with the flow and eat whatever's in circulation where it's convenient, and you're driving most places instead of walking. I mean, some people live in cities, but if you're not living in a city, if you live in the suburbs or the rural areas, you're driving most of the time. Let's face it. So you're not unless you choose to go exercise at like the gym or you run outdoors, you're not getting much like hard exercise. And yeah, walking's great, by the way, but most people don't do a lot of it. And so therefore, it's just normal to pick up weight. In fact, the statistics, I don't know what it is for men, but I heard for women from the ages of 25 to 45, they pick up an average of 30 pounds over 2 decades. That's a good bit, right? I mean, that's out of sync with your height, weight, proportion. Not that it makes anybody bad per se. I mean, it's expected that if people don't do something counter to what's in this flow of events, that they're going to gain that weight, right? It's because the food is just very calorically dense. It's very fatty, very sugary, very high, salt, fat, sugar combination. And that's not good, right? We need to eat more, leaner foods, like, we've heard the whole thing, fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, beans, and starches. And I try to eat as much as that as I can. Yeah, like everybody, you fall off the wagon periodically. I've had some cookies recently that have been getting the better of me. So, you go off the wagon for a little bit, then you jump back on. So here's my thing. Whenever I gain about 5 pounds, I don't know if I'm psychotic. I just can't take it. No, Tommy, I don't eat meat. I used to. I grew up eating it, and I don't think meat is bad nutritionally. Don't get me wrong. There's people argue that meat's bad for you. I think in terms of quantity and the type, it can be bad. So let me give you an example. So if you're eating a cow's natural diet, if you don't know this, is grass. So if you eat quote unquote steak, or what I call chopped up cow, which I know is inflammatory, but that's what it is. And if you're eating it from a normal grass-fed field where they move around, they're in their natural environment, they're not all stressed out, there's no hormones, antibiotics, all that stuff, and they're eating grass, that's a normal life for an animal, right? So the tissue that comes out of that animal when you consume it is quote unquote normal, natural. But if you have an animal that's in a feedlot that's being fed alfalfa, corn, soy, they don't eat that. That's not their natural feed. It's just too difficult for the large systems to put them out on a grazing area for the most part. So that animal has much more fat in its tissue, and that is actually tastier to the customer. It's got like more of a fatty profile, so it's more delicious, but it's not as good for you. And if you're eating that frequently, I'm not trying to out anybody. If you're a red meat lover, I get it. It tastes good, but our intestines aren't meant to hold a large volume of red meat. We never had large volumes of red meat through our history. We've evolved over 180,000 years. We're only in the very last sliver of that. And if you think of it from this perspective, nobody back in the day had access to that much animal food, very rarely. Now, some people that live up in northern latitudes only have access to fishing and hunting. They don't have a lot of plants because it won't grow. So they've evolved to eat like, seals and stuff like that. And their bodies respond differently to the quantity of animal tissue. But most people on the planet doesn't or don't. So, the more I learned about nutrition, and I studied, gastronomic, what do they call it? Anthropology, which is going back and studying the past of human society. Most human societies are mostly gatherers and then some hunting. And think of it this way, if it was 30,000 years ago, you didn't have a refrigerator. You couldn't pop the leftovers in the fridge or freezer. So you had to do things like try to cure it with smoke. But what about pre-fire, right? You didn't have smoke. So you couldn't cure stuff. So you had to eat it or leave it, and you couldn't cook it. And that made people sick because of the bacteria. So in many cases, there wasn't much consumption of animal foods, at least not on the regular. So if we evolved to eat mostly plants and different things that could be gathered, that makes sense, right? And we have a longer digestive tract to consume all the cellulose that's in plant matter. Most carnivores, obligate carnivores like tigers, they have much shorter digestive systems for that very reason. That stuff can't sit for a while, it starts to putrefy. And that's what gets people sick. So, I think the ideal diet, I'll just lay it out for you after all the research. You can add in animal protein. Don't get me wrong. There's no absolutes, right? But I think the best one possibly for your body, as long as you got it balanced, you have to get the right balance of nutrients, right? You can take this on and screw it up, and then it causes you to get sick, and people go back to animal stuff, which makes sense. But if you do it with a doctor, test your blood beforehand, test your blood a week or two into it to make sure you're getting the macro and micronutrients you need, a whole food plant-based diet supplemented with vitamin B12 and full of enough protein, beans, and a lot of foods have proteins, by the way. If you don't know that, if you look at the food profile, there's a website called Chronometer, and you type in what you ate as far as the portion sizes and what you ate. They got a whole database. It'll tell you what you got for eating that food. And so you can pre-plan your meals based on running it through Chronometer if you want to be that specific. But generally, once you learn enough about it, you figure out what the meal combinations are, and then you kind of just mix and match to make it work for you. But people might ask, well, what the hell do you eat then, man? If you don't eat meat, don't eat eggs, don't eat dairy, what do you eat? It's very simple. I'll give you an example I had for dinner last night. In fact, I'll show you right now. I didn't finish it. So let me turn my camera on, otherwise it'll be backwards. Not that it really matters, but turn on the camera. Flip camera. There we go. So this is what I had last night. So this is a rice that I made in my rice pressure cooker. It's got some onions and mushrooms that I cooked up that I mixed in with it that are sauteed, no oil. Then this is zucchini with onions that I made up separately. And then I have some lentil stew that I mixed in with it. So that has a lot of protein from the lentils. This is not a cooking show, by the way. Sorry about this. I'm just showing you what people always ask. Well, what the hell do you eat then? That's a good source of protein, the lentils. So that's where I get the protein from. So that's an example of a meal. It's got vegetables. It's got some beans, lentils, mushrooms, onions, rice. A variety of stuff that's good for your body. And I got to tell you this: if you haven't tried stuff like this, which a lot of people are probably like, you feel way better after you eat it. What I mean by that is that you don't feel weighed down, you don't feel tired, you feel lean and clean. But it takes a while to adjust your taste buds because I guarantee you this meal wouldn't be very exciting to most people the first time you eat it, right? You're like, but you have to kind of adjust down. It took me about a week. Everyone told me this is what you have to go through. It's almost like getting off drugs. It's the same thing. We're used to high flavor, high sugar, high fat. It's hard to go back down. It's like driving the Cadillac for 20 years. Now you got to go back and ride the bicycle, and you're like, damn. So when I'm on the run, it's harder. Sometimes I'm not perfect with my vegan or plant-based diet. Like, for example, if you're at a place in the airport and all they have is like a slice of pizza left, and you're hungry as hell, and I'm not a perfectionist about it. Some people are absolutely perfectionist. I add a little bit of salt. Someone's asking if I put salt. A little bit. I have this Himalayan sea salt that's supposed to be better, and I put a little bit of it in there, but not much. And then I put in pepper. I like pepper. But the goal is to put in low fat, flavorful things like lemon juice or lime juice that adds a lot of flavor without adding a lot of fat. That's kind of the goal. Anyway, I don't want to talk about nutrition. I could do a whole, we could do a whole half day webinar or whole day on nutrition, but because I've studied that. You have to really study it if you're going to make a major change. Put this back. Um, there's a video. There's a video on my YouTube. It's one of the shorts. So if you go to my YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/@chipbarnes. There's a video in one of I have my videos divided up in, regular segments and then shorts. That's how I mostly do it. And in one of the videos, I have a kale smoothie that I make. So if you're curious about that, I mean, I like it a lot. I do it usually once a day when I'm in the rhythm. Last few days I haven't done it because it's colder right now. But it's just a mixture of kale, different nutrients, and then some frozen fruit and a lot of vegetables, and just kind of makes this like slurpy like thing. And if you want to add a little maple syrup for flavor, but it kind of makes the kale taste go away, which most people don't like kale. I don't blame you. But believe it or not, and by the way, somebody told me recently that because of the way the cells are structured in most, vegetables like kale, if you heat them, it opens up the cellular walls, which lets more of the nutrients out so you can assimilate it and digest. That's probably true. So I tried that and it wasn't bad. Like, took some chopped kale and put it in a pan and just, no oil, and just heated it up and mixed it in with my, like I showed you that meal a second ago. I like to mix things in because eating kale by itself, it's just not that sexy. But if you mix it in, it kind of fits in. Anyway, if you would have asked me if I'd be eating kale 5 years ago, I would have said, hell no. No effing way. But it is good for you. If you look at the top of the nutrient food chain, it's the number one food, right? Someone, you look like you give great hugs. I guess. I don't know. I'm probably about right down the middle average. I don't know if I give better than anybody else. But that's an interesting comment. Was I a hippie? No, I've never been a hippie. I'm more of, listen, look at me. I'm more of a, it's funny because I had rental properties that I owned and managed for a number of years, and they were in very, rough parts of town. There's different ways of doing real estate investing, and unfortunately, one of the most lucrative ones is renting in the city. I don't do it anymore because I kind of, felt guilty about it, but for a while I didn't. And I ended up living in one of the houses because I had a little bit of legal trouble and I had nowhere to go because I was kind of stuck. So I live down there. Yeah, I'm mostly vegan, a little bit of vegetarianism when I have to. But so I lived for a year and a half. I lived in this neighborhood where I would come and go, and people thought I was a cop. Like, they thought I was an undercover cop because I don't have any tattoos. I have short hair. I'm a white dude. This is an all black neighborhood. So no, I'm not a hippie. I'm down with what hippies do. It's all good. People that are down to the earth. And in fact, I've studied things like permaculture, and I've actually participated in some things called the VA farms. And I've contacted people from these, what are called intentional communities. I went through a permaculture design course. If you don't know what that is, it's just how to live off the land without all this crazy energy and stuff. And I think we're going to have to learn that. I mean, if imagine the future just for a second. I mean, imagine a very difficult future where you're living in an urban area and whatever used to be available from the stores isn't as much or at all. How many people do you think could survive for more than a week in that environment, right? People would be freaking the hell out. So he says, why do I feel guilty? About rental property. So let me explain this, okay? If you don't know this, the way it works in most places in the United States, at least, is that investors will invest in property. Usually they have better credit, so they'll buy homes on some sort of finance. So you put down a small amount of money, then the bank gives you a loan, and then the property can appreciate, and also you're bringing in income from tenants. Now, why do I feel guilty about that? Because most of the tenants can't afford the rent. So it's very difficult for people to pay 40 or 50% of their income in rent, which was about what I was charging. It was the market rate, but people that are low income just can't afford it. Some get vouchers from the government to help subsidize it. But listen, if you're a landlord, I got to say, listen, this is the truth, whether you want to think it or not. You're exploiting people who can't afford to buy a house. That's what's happening. I was doing that. Like, not blame. If you want to do it, go ahead. But most investments, just to let you know, it's not some inanimate thing. When you buy stock in a company or you buy real estate, you're exploiting somebody. That's where the profit comes from. All profit in modern corporate activity or modern capitalism is the difference between the marginal value and the net marginal value and the cost. If you have a worker in your company, they're producing a certain amount of benefit for their labor. The person at the top is keeping the difference between what the market price is for what they sell services or products and what you pay the person to do it. That's just the bottom line. That's always been that way. That's where capitalism comes from. It's making money off the net marginal benefit of labor and exploiting, quote, natural resources that you sell them for more than it costs you to extract them or produce them for a profit. That's how the game works. But ultimately, you're exploiting nature and you're exploiting people. Let's face it. Now, are there sometimes it's less exploitative and there's more of a win-win because of the nature of the business? Sure, like maybe a tech company where they charge customers for a valuable service and people get paid a high wage and it works out sometimes. But most situations are not that. Let's face it. And unions, which used to be able to balance some of that out, are all but gone in the United States. They're making a little comeback right now, but that was a counteracting force to work against taking most of the net marginal value and putting it towards highly profitable companies. And when companies start to make obscene profits and they're not sharing it with the workers say, hey, we're doing all this work, we're working all these hours, you haven't raised our pay anywhere near the pace of your profits. What the hell? And that's a fair thing to say, I believe, And I used to be ownership class. I was raised in a Republican household. I was raised very conservative to be a business, and I've gone to business school and I have an MBA in finance. So I know how to do all this stuff. What I want to do now is I want to take what I've learned and I want to build different kind of companies if I have the time and space to do it. If I had somebody to help me with the social media stuff and I could just do this and then go do that, that's what I would go do. Because that's what I love doing. I love building businesses from scratch. I've done it like 6 times. But so instead of building a traditional business, I've talked about this before, I'll go through it quickly. Am I a leftist? I'm a far leftist, like so far left, I'm almost back on the right. I just don't align with any particular party, and I can't stand the party system. I think it's really bad. And there's no left in the United States, by the way. There is no left in the United States. The left is the middle of Europe, just so you know. Somebody says, I'll do your social media. Josephine, please contact me at my email address. I'm going to follow you back, and I'm going to snapshot your profile here so I don't forget who you are. But yeah, if you want to talk to me, Josephine, here's where I'm stuck. I'll go back to what I was saying about the new form of company. But if you don't know much about social media, there's some startup work you have to do as far as your branding, your look, your image, your thumbnails, how you post content, when and where you post content, scheduling content, setting up your Patreon, your finding it. There's a lot to set up, right? And a lot of people know more about this. There's also digital marketing, which is how you kind of let people know. Right now, I've been doing it organically. People are just, telling other people about me or, reposting videos, and I make it in somebody's feed. They might see me on their live and that's how I've grown to 107,000 followers in 3 months, which I guess is okay. Some people have probably done it a lot faster, but for someone like who's a no name like me to get there quickly is not bad, right? So, but I'm not doing enough good things on my other places. It looks kind of sketchy. I've put a lot of my recorded lives up on YouTube and Rumble, but they're out of order. Like one time it'll say, January 26th, part 1, and January 26th, part 2 is like 17 videos away. I don't know how to reorganize them. So there's just so much I don't know. And there are probably things I don't even know about how to do stuff on social media. So Josephine, if we can connect, somebody very nicely helped me with some of that a few days ago. A guy who's here on TikTok. I don't want to tell his name unless he wants me to. But a lot of great people out there. So yeah, if I could, I want to do what I love to do and what I'm best at. I think I'm good at this part, which is the talking part. But my organizational skills have gotten destroyed by my Gulf War. I don't know what the hell is going on. I'm a mess. Seriously. I mean, if you spent a day with me in my life, you'd be like, damn, boy, you are messed up. Anyway, so we haven't talked about the tunnel in New York City. That was underneath of a synagogue or something like that. But let's go back to the business format, and then we'll talk about some current events. So the business format is something called a cooperative. And if you've never heard of a cooperative, they have them. There's some pretty large ones in Europe and in South America. One of them's called Mondragon or something like that. Huge business, and it has different industries. It's kind of like a holding company. But in a collective business, a collectively run company, the co-op, everybody owns it in some form or another. So, for example, let's say that we started a business for the social media company, and our goal was to bring in, more people like me who can be quote on camera, but then a whole support staff that runs the business. It wouldn't be Chip being the founder and the owner, right? I wouldn't be like the guy who sucks in all the net marginal benefit of like I talked about a moment ago. It would be flatter and more. It's democratic. So everybody who works in the company has a say in what the company does, both with money and as far as direction and growth and internal decision making. And that's a better thing, right? You come to work every day and you're like, well, damn, I'm not just a cog in the wheel and someone's just squeezing me and paying me the least they can to keep me here. I'm included in the decision making. I get much better pay. I get to vote on my pay periodically. If we have more money in the company, we can vote to increase wages. And in addition, in terms of the work that's being done, it's much more collaborative because you're going to be much more likely to work with the other department in the company if you feel like you have an ownership stake, right? Because the better the company does, the better you do in terms of your wages and what happens. And you'll be able to pull better talent too. I mean, how many people wouldn't want to work in that environment versus one that's very hierarchical and you're told what to do? The other thing about the way I would organize mine is there'd be a dual rating system. So right now you're a worker, you get a performance review by your boss or whatever they do in the company. So every so often, every 6 months or a year, you sit down in that chair and they go, so Jane, how you doing and all that, and they tell you, you're good at this, but you need to do better, whatever it is, and you're like, oh, blah blah blah. Well, in this case, not only do you get a performance review by the boss, but you, as the worker, get to review the boss. So you get to tell the boss, and it's going to be a lot more people reviewing the boss than the boss reviewing you, right? So the bosses have to be good to their people. You can't be a douche. You can't be a jerk, whether you're male or female. You can't be a bad boss because you're going to get kicked out. So I think that's pretty cool too. And then you add in the fact that the people who manage the company, let's say that I'm somebody running the business or whatever my position is, or other people, the management can't make more than a certain multiple of the median paid worker. So let's say the average salary is $60,000. Just pick a number because wages are going up. The most that the people running the company can make is like 4 or 5 times that. So instead of a CEO of a big company making 300 times what the average worker makes, which is obscene, like 25 million bucks a year, whatever the hell it is, the most somebody can make is like, $250,000, which is still a high pay, but it's not nearly as obscene as some of these companies where the management team is just paid this ridiculous amount of money. And it gets voted on periodically by the whole company. So if the company's doing better, they may vote because they like the people in management. They're going to give them a raise or some kind of bonus, or maybe they don't like them as much and they want the money to go back to the workers. Whatever it may be, it's voted on by the company. We're talking about cooperatives. If you don't know, Abby, we're talking about cooperatives as a different form of business to the traditional ownership model. Somebody brought up why is being a landlord perhaps, why would I feel guilty about that? So I talked about why it's basically exploitation of net marginal benefit, and it was putting people in a bad spot. They were having a hard time paying the rent. So I felt bad about that. So the bottom line is you're running a more cooperative business where more people are involved. And they have these, like I said, in South America. In fact, one of the reasons why the United States was trying to get into Venezuela is because that's a primary form of business, a collective idea in Venezuela, right? And why don't the outside forces like that? Because guess who doesn't get to make all that net marginal benefit? A foreign corporation that would go in there and sit down and set up shop, take the resources, exploit the labor, leave behind pollution, and then stick around or get the hell out, right? That's an exploitative, hierarchical, highly capitalist, capital-based model, right? Well, no, it's going to be coming up, Al Aubrey. So, like any business, you have to go through the crawl, walk, run stages. I'm just talking potential vision because I've only started doing this for 3 months. So, who knows? Maybe none of what I'm talking about is even possible. But wherever the best possibilities are, I'd like to do multiple ones. Not that I want to overextend myself, but let's say there's an air conditioning company in town they're all running for profit and the owners are making, $700,000 a year while the workers are making 40 or whatever. I think that's too much money, or whatever the owners are making. That's a multiple that's beyond what I think is reasonable. And listen, they can run their company however the hell they want. But if they're paying their workers, let's say $60,000 a year, I can pay my workers 80 because I'm taking the money that's out of what I would have made and giving it back to them. I think that's a better deal for someone to come work, right? So it's just a different form of business. And I think at the community level, we have to find out what we can do, right? We all talk about what can we do? Voting is difficult to change things. You got lobbyists, corporate personhood, money is free speech, dark pool, political action committees, super PACs, special interest groups like AIPAC and other industries, and then the national security state that controls, the media, surveillance, war state, security, all that bullshit. And you add all that up, and it's a very difficult stranglehold to break through for the constituents, right? They're supposed to serve us. We pay their salaries through the tax dollars, so they're supposed to serve the interest of the voters who put them, quote unquote, put them in office. But that's all changed. The people that are even put up for election are put up mostly by the same forces. They're kind of pre-selected. And then we get to choose between the one we hate the least, A and B, whether it's president or senator or representative, right? That's typically the case. Sometimes you might like somebody, but very rarely do their decisions once they're elected marry up with what they said on the campaign trail, right? We know that, like, damn, they made all these promises and then they broke every single one of them, right? And then when they come up for election, they try to smooth talk their way out of it and say, oh, well, it was this person's fault. I couldn't do this because of the Republicans or whatever. It's all bullshit. Let's face it. So the question is, how do we do things to get around or to try to work within this stuck system? And the answer is we have to do what we can at the community level. It's going to be from the ground up, not from the top down. We're not going to elect some savior that's going to come in and make everything better. We're seeing that right now with Israel-Palestine, right? The influence that these different facts, that the war state and these outside lobbyist groups like AIPAC and others are keeping the country from having a different policy vis-a-vis a horrible situation overseas that the world is looking at with, like, what the hell? So they're looking at Israel like pariah state, as well as the U.S., at least our government, for supporting what we're seeing, right? So it doesn't need to be like that, but it's not going to be reformed easily. One of the things we can do, again, just from the ground up to change the capital system, if we want to, is to not to refuse to participate in the hierarchical model as best we can. Some people are going to say, well, what am I supposed to do? Not have a job, Chip? I'm going to lose my house. I get it. Okay. There's going to be a transition period. But if we don't start doing something, it's going to perpetuate itself and it's going to get worse for the working class, right? I think that's pretty much a guarantee at this point. So the question is, are you open to talking to other people about these things, to raise awareness, consciousness, they call it, class consciousness, and maybe have a chance to make things better? And one of the ways we can do it at the community level is to create alternative business structures that are better for families and working people than they are for the owners. Now, most small business owners aren't bad people. Let's face it, they're running smaller companies, and they're much better than the corporations. But it still has the same kind of model where most of the profits go up to a very small number of people, right, if the business does well. And not that that's a horrible thing, right? People work hard, they take risks, they invest money, they work their ass off, and they make money. Good for them. But still, it would be ideal if we had structures that benefited everybody more, to some extent, whatever that is in that organization. So, and giving people a democratic vote in the workplace. I think people like that idea, right? They feel like they're more a part of rather than being pushed out of like a little cog in the wheel. So I'm down for that. I'd much rather, instead of me making $500,000 a year, which I could certainly do if I dropped all this and went and started some business because I know how to do it. I just don't want to do that anymore. I've done it 4 times before and started 6 other ones. So I'm 6 total, 4 that did really well. That's not where my head is anymore. I'm 56, you don't have much time in your life past, 75, 80 if you're lucky. So you got a limited window, right? Do you want to do some good? You realize after you get a little older, most people, that, all that money doesn't mean jack shit, right? It's just, it's chasing your shadow, as I like to call it. So that's one thing we can do. We also have our labor, right? So our labor, eventually, if we can structure things in a way that we can withdraw it, like you would during a strike, you can use that as a tool of leverage. So maybe that can be done on a larger scale. And again, the union has a fund, right? So people who do go on strike don't get, their life doesn't get dramatically worse. They're able to kind of maintain through the strike. We got to do something similar if we're going to take that on a larger scale. It's called mutual aid. And like I said, all you have to do is help one other person, right? You don't have to take $50,000 of your savings and have to spend all your money. Like, I open my place up to somebody to come stay. maybe you can have a family of three. If you have an extra room in your basement, you can let them stay if they're going to lose their house or whatever. You get the idea. It's all about making it work. And if you're not willing to do that, if you're like, well, that's too much of a hassle, it's too much risk. Listen, you do whatever you want. But everyone who says they love their kids and they want their grandkids to be happy and all those things, if you're not doing something to demonstrate that love, which maybe you're doing something like paying for their college, good for you, it's all great. But the same forces that are holding down the working class are going to keep holding down, and more so over time. And if there's not something done to counter that, it's going to continue its inertia, which it's been going on for the last 40, 50 years, right? And you add in the unlimited printing of money because the US is in late stage empire, and whatever money you have saved up or the value of your stock paper assets are going down in nominal terms. In actual terms, they're going up, but in terms of the purchasing power, if you were to cash out your stocks 20 years ago, they were worth way more as far as per share of stock than they are now, even though the stocks may have appreciated in value. But the value of money is falling quickly. In the last 3 years, the money's dropped like 30% in value. It's crazy. So if you don't have hard assets, like if you don't invest in physical gold, physical silver, real estate, whatever, those assets keep their value because they're a physical, tangible asset. But if you have degrading savings of monetary assets, you're going to be losing, right? And that's a big problem because it's stealing from the working class in a very stealth way, which sucks. If you're somebody who's rich and you have $30 million and the value of your money goes down by 50%, you still have 15 million bucks. But if you're making 60 grand a year and the money goes down by 50%, you're making 30. Much different situation, right? In terms of your lifestyle. Somebody asked about tunnels. So if you don't know, there was a discovery of a bunch of tunnels. I think it was under a synagogue in New York City. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I don't even know what the hell they're being used for. I just know it was a big news story that a bunch of tunnels. I saw it at my eyes. If you know more about it, I can look it up, but I got to go to my computer to do it. And by the way, I don't know if anybody here is really good at trading. I've been trying to do it for a long time, and there's just something about my personality that's making it hard for me to do it. Like, I don't know if it's fear of loss or I don't know, maybe I just have ADD or whatever the hell it is. But trading is very hard. I've been watching the markets for decades, but I'm just not a good trader. I know exactly how to do it. It's like basketball. There's coaches in basketball that are really good basketball coaches, but if you put them on the court, there's no way they could compete against the players, right? And that's kind of how I am with trading. I can definitely teach people how to do it. I just struggle with it. Anyway, I wish I was great at it. And by the way, if I could get good at it if I tried hard enough. In fact, let me do this. Let me take off my earbud because I was doing it to go out with my dog. Hold on, Fraser. Hold on. Let me see if I can turn this light off. Make it better here for this. I'll turn this light on here. There we go. Okay, let me just get a mic check. Can somebody type the number 1 in the chat or say, can you hear the sound? Trading can be like gambling. I can go over it at some point. Just to let you know, so what is trading versus investing? Investing is where you purchase assets and you hold on to them for the long term. Thank you. Trading is when you're in and out of positions in some shorter amount of time. Some people trade differently than others. Some people are in and out, like high frequency trading. Some people hold their stuff for a half a day. Some people hold it for a few days. Some people hold it for a month or two. Those are all different types of trading, different time frames. But what most traders eventually figure out is, and this is what the big trading firms do, they limit their risk. So each time you go into something, you're only risking a little bit of your account. And so if it goes against you, it moves against the way you hope it will, you get out. You get out. But eventually, it's like flying a kite, right? You may throw a kite up on a windy day and it falls back down. You throw it up, it falls back down. You throw it, maybe the fourth time you throw it up, it just goes a little bit, right? And then it comes back down. And probably out of 20 trades or 50 trades, you have a lot of that going on, where you're losing about 40% of the time the kite falls back down. You have a bunch of singles, like little small gains where the kite takes off a little bit, but every once in a while you catch this really big gust of wind. And as long as you just keep letting the string out and don't pull the kite back down, it just goes and goes and goes. That's trading. So basically you take little paper cuts and eventually something takes off. And generally speaking, 1 or 2 trades a year for most traders are the ones that make most of their money against all the little losses they have. That's generally how it works. And as long as you let them go far enough, they keep. So half of patience is being very patient and waiting for, things to come to certain levels and not trading. Just sit on your hands. And then once you get into something, sit on your hands and see if it can go like the kite string. That's kind of it.
And I'm good at analogies, right? So that's kind of a good analogy. But the people that screw up put on too much risk too quickly when they're not that good. And what happens, and everybody does this. I've not, that's the one thing I haven't done, thank God. But I've taken too many paper cuts, but I haven't had those big winners. So I've lost a little bit of money, but not a huge amount. But most people lose a lot of money. Most people lose their whole account because what they do is they take too much risk on the initial trades and it pushes their account value down so much that they can't recover. And then they take a lot of extra risks, which they shouldn't take, and then boom. Am I going to be live around 5:30 today? No, Brian. I go live on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday from 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday when I'm nighttime at 8 to 10. So, I could do a whole webinar. I could turn my camera around, show you charts. I could show you time frames, different instruments, what's the difference between stocks, options on stocks, futures, what the different futures contracts are, expiration dates, how to trade them, what the leverage is, all that stuff. But what trading is, it's just like playing blackjack professionally, which I've done. It's all probability and statistics. So if you were to go work for, let's say, the trading desk of Goldman Sachs, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to pair you with a senior trader for 3 months. You're not going to trade at all. You're going to watch that person and what they do. Then once you get an idea of what they're supposed to do, then they put you what's called micro risk. So you still want you to play with real money because there's emotions involved, but they might put you on 1/10 of the loss per trade as a senior trader. And then you have to build a portfolio of trades showing you know how to get in and get out at the right times, and you can maintain your ability to take the small losses. That's the most important skill. And as long as you do that, and then eventually they'll put you on larger increments of money until you get up to your full risk size. And then they let you trade. If some people take onto it really well and they give them more latitude because they're excellent trader and they're big winners overcome their losers. And other traders, they don't progress as well, like guys like me, and they keep you on very tight risk forever until you overcome that. So who knows? If I took a more narrow approach, because I'm a systems thinker on the broad level, it's hard for me to stay focused on one thing. That's my brain. So I have to go against and also your emotions. The other thing you learn very quickly is you know yourself after a while, like where do you get the most jitters? And what you have to do is, if your system says go, because of your rules, it's like a flight deck. You have these checklists, and as long as your flight deck checks out, you have to get in. Every time, no exception. If the rules are met, you get in. Regardless of your fear, regardless of your worries, you just get in. That's part of my problem too. I don't get in and it's like boom, the kite goes. I'm like, damn, I should have thrown my kite. So you have to do that. That's the first thing. And then what you have to do is each time something happens, you got to go back and review it. So you get good at seeing scenarios play out. You look at different variables, like confluence of things is what matters in trading. So you have a certain level of previous buying. You have a time of day that's good for a lot of liquidity. You have volume coming in when the buyers step in, things like that. And those things together normally will make a move consistently. When you don't have those things, it doesn't. And you realize very quickly, like, oh, I made a mistake on this. I should have waited or whatever. And over time, you eliminate your emotional problems and your analysis mistakes, and then more of your analysis and emotions are better managed and you do better. That's the best way I can put it. Now, getting good at trading is like trying to take a flagpole, which is this big, up to the size of a telephone pole, which is this big. So it's like a tree. You start as a sapling, and over time you grow rings, and the outside of the tree gets bigger, right? But we all know it takes about a year for each ring to develop on the tree. And as a trader, most people want to be at the oak tree level when they first start because they see people making big money. They're thinking, I can just make it big, right? Well, the people that make the most money accept the fact that you're in sapling mode, and they just slowly go through the process of building with what I just said. And it's hard to do because you want to make the quick money, right? Everybody wants to, I want to get rich trading, right? It's a normal thing to have this over excitement. Imagine if you were going to go play in the NBA or let's say PGA golf, right? You wanted to play golf for a living and make money, you want to win the FedEx Cup or whatever the hell they call it. And you're up against the best people in the world, right? Well, they've been playing since they were like 7 years old, and they've worked on their short game. They've worked on their putting. They've worked on their driving, the mechanics. They have a coach. They have a psychology coach. They've been doing it through college. Then they played, they got their tour card, and they sucked as a rookie for the first 4 years. They eventually got better, and then they competed at the highest level. But that took them like 26 years to get there, or 25 years. That's how you increase your skill set. It's just slow. It's like playing guitar. I've gotten okay at guitar, but if I played every day for a half an hour, I'd be great right now. I've been playing for like 30 years. I mean, I'm not bad, but I'm not as good as I would be. So you can't skip the steps, is what I'm trying to say. You have to go through the pain and the suffering of going through the steps in the process. But if you do that, and you're okay at being disciplined and understanding your emotions, and you have a system that has what's called edge, you'll eventually make money. Eventually make money. But think of it this way too. Let's say that same flagpole. We talked about the tree. It doesn't take quite as long to get good if you follow the process. That's not as good. But imagine that the flagpole, you were going to paint it one coat of paint at a time to get to the size of the telephone pole, right? Now, you can't grab a 5-gallon bucket of paint and throw it at the pole and hope for the paint to get big enough, because that's ridiculous, right? You have to do it one at a time. One coat, let it dry. Next day, one coat, let it dry. So it's going to take you probably about 500 or 600 days of coats of paint to make the pole bigger, right? If you do that, rather than trying to grab the gallon of paint and throw it at it, which is taking too much risk initially, you'll be okay, because you still have money to play with. You can still grab the bucket of paint next day. You still go to the hardware store. But most people throw the 5-gallon bucket hoping for the best, and when all the paint hits the ground, they're like, "Damn, the market's against me." No, it's not. You didn't go through the process, and I understand that because I've tried to skip it. Everyone tries to shortcut it. Trust me. And they blow their account, and they try again. And finally, after blowing like 3 accounts, which I haven't done, thankfully, because I learned all this stuff by watching YouTube videos, but I still suck. Don't get me wrong. I'm still like the golfer who's like 9 years old in terms of trading. I'm not that good, but I understand it. So I could probably be a great teacher and coach, but in terms of doing it, you probably want somebody who's excellent trading. I don't know if that works or not. There's a coach named Jeff Van Gundy in the NBA who used to be a coach for the Houston Rockets, and he could never play basketball. He's short, bald, kind of not very athletic. But he's a student of the game, and he was able to direct the players who were very good in a way, and he could relate to the players and got along with everybody. Coaching is a very intricate thing. So he's a good coach, but not a good player. And that's possible, although I've found in the trading community, people want to learn from people who are good at the trading. They don't trust them otherwise. But most of the traders are not good teachers. I've realized that. They're not good teachers. And I think I'm okay at teaching. I kind of go back and I bring people along. I try to, whenever a guest will say something like 3-letter, could you please tell people what the hell that is? So, I don't know. I'd like to do a business around that. By the way, if you don't know, on social media, the websites or content that make the most money in terms of advertisers is by far financial stuff, especially trading. So it's like 10 times. If I was to do content like this on YouTube, and I was able to get some advertising dollars, I doubt I would, if much, because I'm getting nothing from TikTok. But it's 10 times, the clicks per 1,000 or whatever they call it, on that kind of content. So it'd be smart for me financially to do that. But there's a lot of people doing it very well. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that the whole day. So are there any other questions that everybody want to come up? Because I like to talk to people on here. Yeah, somebody says Richard Medhurst has a good vid that just came out. Richard Medhurst, if you don't know who Richard is, he's excellent. Let me pull up my web browser here. Let me pull up Richard Medhurst. If you don't know who Richard is, he's a Syrian-born person who speaks 4 languages, and he lives in the UK. And his YouTube channel is just his name. He's gotten demonetized, unfortunately. But he's great. Let me do this, and then I'll talk about the New York City tunnels. So if you go to youtube.com or Rumble, I think he has a Rumble channel too. Let me see, let's type in Richard Medhurst. All right. Yeah. Richard did a video 2 days ago. It says How Israel Destroyed Arab Jewish Communities, featuring Ilyan Pape, the same author who wrote The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. By the way, I keep getting these trolls sending me emails that are saying, the ethnic cleansing of Palestine has been completely debunked. Ilyan Pape has no idea what he's talking about. I'm like, what? And they also tried to say, if I don't know if anybody here saw my interview or my live with Liam, and Liam Liam O'Mara is this professor of Middle Eastern Studies and World History. He's got a PhD. And they were saying that he has no idea what he's talking about. I'm like, what? I mean, Liam's probably one of the most knowledgeable people about Israel-Palestine I've ever heard speak. I listened to him one night on a live for 3 hours. I didn't even know who he was because I was doing some other work. It was in the background. And I finally went back to my phone and I'm like, damn, this guy got like long black hair and a beard. He's like a crazy looking dude. Okay, Richard Medhurst says, Henry Kissinger, war criminal and world's biggest, that's about Henry Kissinger. That's 1 month ago. Let me see his most recent ones. Yeah, that was the one he did on Ilian Pape, as far as having an interview. Yeah, Richard's very well respected. I think you'll like him. He has more of a forceful personality than I do, and he gets a little emotional, a little riled up, and he's kind of like, he kind of goes after the opponents a little more fervently than I do. I'm more professorial, I guess. Yeah, Henry Kissinger was a bad dude, and he lived till 100. That's very discouraging to know that people are that awful can live that long. He didn't deserve it. He deserved to be in jail for his whole life. He was bad. Just look up East Timor. Henry Kissinger, East Timor, and you'll see about him. Okay, let me look up New York City tunnels first, because I don't know much about it, quite frankly, so I'm going to have to look it up. Like I always say to you all, I'm not a great news guy. I'm just more of an analysis, so I'm sorry, let me go to Google. Let's see, let's type in New York City tunnels. Yeah, I thought it was under a synagogue, so it says secret tunnel under New York synagogue. I wonder what part of the city it's in. Starts chaotic scenes. Let me see what it says here. So there were chaotic scenes inside a synagogue in New York City Monday night as a group of students tried to prevent a secret tunnel from being filled in. So it says it's 770 Eastern Parkway in the Crown Heights neighborhood of Brooklyn. Okay, so it's on the east side. And it says a group of individuals unlawfully entered the building and damaging a wall. Videos that have gone viral on social media show them ripping down wood paneling on a wall, several men sitting or standing on the space behind it in an apparent attempt to stop the tunnel from being sealed off with cement, meaning somebody didn't want people to go down there. So who knows what's down there? I mean, interesting. There's a lot of spooky stuff going on. You had that thing in Miami about the aliens and stuff like this. I mean, there's probably a lot more going on in the world than we're made aware of. And you got the Epstein list, and then you got Pizzagate, if you know what that stuff is. And you always think that a lot of this stuff is probably some big wacky conspiracy that Alex Jones talks about, right? But what if some of that stuff's true, right? What if some of these crazy people who are, said to be these demonic forces, which I have no evidence of, but what if there's really some of that stuff going on? How awful is that? If the thing with children and all that stuff is, adrenochrome, if you've heard about that. Yeah, there was an explosion yesterday at a Texas hotel. Some people claim it was a targeted assassination. They say it was a gas leak in the kitchen that ignited, that destroyed part of a building that was a hotel. I don't know, Tommy. Tommy, it could be. Tommy's saying it has to come true, some of it. If you look at what's happening in the world writ large, you'd wonder if all this conflict that's kind of spinning out of control right now could be the beginning of whatever the next chapter is of this. Some people say final chapter. I don't know for sure. But anyway, who knows? I wish I had more insight into it. Sometimes you don't want to know, right? It's like this stuff is just a little alarming, a little uncomfortable to hear about. I'd really like somebody who's pro-Israel, if there's anybody in the audience that's pro-Israel or pro-Zionist, to come up and speak. I haven't seen any comments from anybody, but I like to have conversations with people. I think it's very useful to hear how other people think and speak, and to be polite and to be, have decorum. I was on a live yesterday trying to speak when I was given my turn by the host, and there was this woman from, I guess she was very pro, I don't know if she was American or not, but she just kept interrupting. She wouldn't let somebody talk for 5 seconds. She would just jump on them. That's not true. It's like, listen, you just talked for 3 minutes. I didn't say a word. I kept myself quiet. I listened to every point you made. Didn't interrupt you. I thought all the things you said was garbage, but I didn't jump in. And all you do is jump in. It feels like they have this entitlement, and they think that they have this ultimate barometer on the truth. They're the world's chosen people. They have everything. They know it all, and you must be wrong. And 90% of the time, the people that take that tact are the ones who are wrong. Let's face it. And, there's no humility among these people. They're arrogant, they're rude, they're condescending, they're very dismissive, they feel entitled, they talk over you, they're angry, they just have this vitriolic way about them that's really bad, I think, Not everybody, but enough that it's notable, right? And they just have no decorum. They feel like they have the right to kind of interject their opinion on top of everybody else's no matter what, and everyone else is wrong. That's a bad way to be. How can you ever learn something and shape your opinions if that's the way you go through life? You can't, right? So I'm not really sure what's happening with these tunnels, but I don't know why someone was trying to cement them in. That's an interesting point too, right? But having said that, as much as I don't like listening to people who speak that way or act that way, I'm willing to have somebody on and listen to their points. A lot of people are trying to say that there was no such thing as Palestine, and that the people that are on the land don't belong there, and that the people who are in Israel are the indigenous people to the land, and therefore God gave the land to Jewish people, and therefore there's no more conversation to be had. People should get out and go to quote unquote go to Arab countries. That's their attitude, which is absurd, because we all know the history, and those people who've grown up in Israeli society or in Zionist households across the world that are spoon-fed that history, that narrative, when they eventually shake it off, they realize how dangerous it is and how irresponsible it is, and then they speak out against it if they have that in their heart to do so. Listen, it's not a good idea if you live in Israel to start speaking against the narratives. There's a person in the Israeli legislature, the Knesset, who's speaking out against what's happening with the policies with respect to what we see happening. He actually used the genosoda, which was what Eric Warsaw says, the genosoda that's going on. And that's unthinkable. And they're trying to get enough people. There's a rule in the Knesset, I think if you get like 75 people, you can expel somebody from the Knesset. And they're trying to gather the votes. They may have already done it. But that's how much backlash you get if you speak out against your country in Israel. They say they have free speech, right? But it's free speech with an asterisk. As long as you support what the government's doing, you have free speech in terms of this issue. So somebody says people need to do research. The Library of Congress is a great start. They have a wonderful website. I've never been to the Library of Congress website. Anyway, somebody just said democracy is an illusion. Ace1213 said democracy is an illusion in the U.S. I completely agree. George Carlin, the comedian who's since passed away, unfortunately. Somebody says, what do you think will happen in the SA court thing this week? You're talking about the International Court of Justice? It said SA thing. I'm not sure what the SA thing refers to. But yeah, George Carlin said that people, you don't have choice, you have the illusion of choice. And that the choices are already made. Candidate A and candidate B have been groomed and pre-selected. And voting is just a ceremony that we go through thinking that it makes a difference, but it doesn't. I fully agree with that. And a lot of people disagree with that, which is okay. But I've worked on presidential campaigns, state campaigns, local campaigns, issue-based campaigns. And there are some things you can do at the local level. But at the state and federal level, a lot of it's predetermined by moneyed interests. And, listen, the people do have power. They're just not exerting it. Individually or little small groups petitioning the government with protests or phone calls or whatever, what do they care? So what? Now, if there was 800,000 people that blocked the State House and wouldn't let people go to work until they, dealt with their concerns, that's a different thing, right? And that's what needs to happen in order for any change to be effected. Unfortunately, because of this, in my estimation, that's what needs to happen. Because of the stranglehold that the moneyed interests and the other powerful interests have over government. And at the local level, it's real estate developers. If you don't know, in a county like where I live, all the money that comes into the people are real estate developers. And so they're looking for favors as far as zoning and this, that, and the other, kind of thing like that. But yeah, and listen, if you're somebody who believes voting works, I'll take a bet with you, okay? I'll take this bet, okay? So I will bet you that if whoever you vote for, Biden, Trump, Bobby Kennedy, or if Biden doesn't run, whoever, Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama or whomever, that in 4 years from now, the wealthy class will have more money than the working class, and that the U.S. national security state will have a larger budget provided for it. The defense thing. I'll make you that bet. And if you whatever amount of money you want to bet, I'll take that bet. So if you think voting is that important, let's put your money where your mouth is, right? But no one's taking that bet. Because obviously that's what controls stuff. We're seeing it right now with Israel. There's no ability for us to go to our elected officials. I mean, thankfully, some elected officials did go visit Gaza finally. Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland and another senator from Oregon named Jeff Merkley. They both went to visit Gaza. First American members of any of the leadership structure going to visit Gaza. And, they were horrified. They're like, why isn't more aid getting in? This is absurd. So, Lindsey Graham, if you don't know who he is, he's a senator from South Carolina. All he does is call for the U.S. to bomb Iran. Like, he wants us to attack the oil fields of Iran. And I have no idea how irresponsible that kind of talk is. And if the U.S. were to do that, it would start a world war. And that would be insane. And by the way, if you don't understand what the interruption of oil prices do, or flow of oil, you think that oil was expensive at recent gas prices of like $4.50 or whatever it was, gas would be $11, and there wouldn't be enough of it available. So it would be, it would destroy the Western economies if there was a major world war and oil supplies were being cut off to the United States or their allies. Europe is highly dependent on imported oil. The U.S. not as much recently because of hydraulic fracturing, but still the world oil market is a world market. So the price of oil would shoot up dramatically for everybody. So you don't want that. And I don't think that's going to happen for quite some time. At least it shouldn't. If there's responsible leadership, I wouldn't call the Biden administration responsible leadership. Because you have people like Anthony Blinken, who's the Secretary of State, who has dual citizenship with the U.S. and Israel. He's a committed Zionist. And who knows where his loyalties lie. But it's probably not exclusively with the United States, right? And people like Lindsey Graham, he was a big promoter of what was happening in Ukraine, going way back to 2012, 2013, and of course after 2014. He was pushing a resistance movement in Ukraine to push out the duly elected, president of Ukraine, which was Viktor Yanukovych, who had more of a leaning towards the Russian side, and that angered the West. So people like John McCain, remember John McCain, he was the senator, longstanding senator from Arizona. He died. But he and Lindsey Graham used to make these little pilgrimages over to Ukraine and support arming and militarizing and telling the people there that you're going to take over one day. We're going to make sure you get in power. All this, nonsense. They're warmongers, right? They're totally behind the military-industrial complex. They want to make more money for the war machine, and they're for projection of American power in terms of supporting militarism abroad. And people die when that happens. It's disgusting. So. Anybody want to come up? I haven't had anybody want to come up yet. This is interesting. Usually at this point in the show, it's an hour in. No one's asked to come up. So, okay, I'll just keep yapping, if you will. But in the beginning of the live, I talked about, undulation of mood. I don't know if any of you go through this, but I do, unfortunately. And some mornings I get up and I just feel lousy. And other mornings I feel better. But today I didn't feel well. I was like, both physically and mentally, I was just kind of in a different space. And I usually rally after a few hours, but having this Gulf War stuff and whatever else is going on in my brain, it's not fun, right? When your mind goes somewhere and you can't control it, it's never fun to deal with. So if anybody out there are suffering from, either mood swings, anxiety, depression, whatever, I understand it's not fun to deal with, right? It's not cool. Yeah, and it makes life 10 times harder, right? And the weird thing is, we in the West have the most stuff, right? We have the easiest lifestyle, and yet we're the most afflicted by this very issue. And I think it's a combination of factors. One, we're living in ways I don't think human beings have evolved to do yet, right? So we're not in the right space that we're used to. We're not in community. We're not spending enough time with others. We're not having enough rich, deep relationships and human contact, which is really necessary for our mental health. And we're somehow supposed to figure out this way to go in and kind of make money and survive in this very odd system that never was this way. So, it's kind of a weird thing where most people are relatively either not excited about it or generally unhappy, even though they got more stuff. Why is it that people who have less stuff are happier than Americans, right? You have people probably in the occupied territories in Gaza, as much as their lives are difficult, they work together more than we do. They have larger families. They tend to be more with each other and spend all their time. They don't have all these distractions that we have. So, and the other thing is, I don't know about you, and this is something I need to work on for me. I'm on my devices way too much. Way too much. I'm probably on my devices like 16 hours a day. I'm trying to follow as much as I can, check out this news site, listen to this YouTube video, watch these TikToks, and all this input. It's just like a tuning fork. It's just such a high level, right? And I do know one thing, when I get away from it and I go out in the woods, it kind of just decompresses. That stuff just kind of dissipates, and it's really healthy, right? So things like meditation, walking in nature, exercise, these things are invaluable tools that we have to kind of, center ourselves. And then, of course, community, if you can figure out a way to make it work. And there's things like meetups. If you go to there's places you can meet up with, you can do bird watching, or you can do axe throwing, or, painting workshops or cooking workshops. There's all sorts of things you can do if we take the time to plug into them, right? But it's so much easier just to kind of sit and do the same old shit and just not break out of that behavior pattern, right? Yeah, somebody says hug trees. I'm all for hugging trees, by the way. I've actually done it innumerable times or I'm out in the woods and I'm just like, you know what? It's time. And I just, I love animals. I love nature. It says it in my bio, and I mean it 100%. And the older I've gotten, the more I realize that this whole thing going on, this trying to make money thing, it's just it's a total sickness. It's a total game. I've talked about the people, I call them the sociopathic serial accumulator class. So they're sociopaths, and they're addicted to getting returns on their investment. And that's where all their focus is in terms of their work life. And it kind of defines their existence. Their identity is tied up in their ability to increase their snowball every year. And even they're never going to spend it. They're never going to use it for anything. They might give some back and say, aren't I great? I gave back, 0.1% of my net worth to a charity. Everybody, even though it may be a good bit of money, like 10 million bucks. Oprah Winfrey is a good example of this. After the Maui fires, she's a Maui resident. So she went in front of the camera and said she's going to raise this money, and she was going to pledge a donation. She didn't put it out there. She pledged a donation of $10 million, which is a lot of money, until you find out she has $2.4 billion. Now, if I have $1,000, that's the equivalent of me giving less than 1 cent in terms of percentage basis of my net worth. Less than 1 penny. That's absurd. That's like flicking a nickel at a homeless person saying, good luck to you. Well, yeah, she said she was going to pledge 10 million. She was trying to raise money. The fund didn't go anywhere. People were like, no, this is absurd. You're some super rich person. You're the largest property owner on Maui. You donate $50 million, which is still a minor, teeny fraction of your net worth. But this is just how rich people are, man. I hate to say it. They're not good people. They're very nice to be around, by the way. I've been around many very wealthy people, and they're perfectly friendly and kind. But in terms of their mindset about money, they're ruthless. And they do things that are unthinkably horrible to working class people, to people that are in other countries through their investments. I will tell you this, even if you have a 401k or a portfolio, I sold all my shit, a long time ago. Because I realized it was all bad. Like, there's no such thing as a sound investment. Everything you invest in the markets, which seems like this inanimate thing, your portfolio, it is destructive. It exploits workers. It mostly exploits the environment in a big bad way. So every time you see one of these horrible videos of some pit somewhere and people, that's what you're doing. You're benefiting from that exploitation if you own shares of stock. There is no such thing as a socially responsible stock. It doesn't exist. That's like saying a very nice serial killer. So listen, it's not easy to separate yourself, myself included, from the system that we're used to benefiting from. And I have a friend who has a good heart. I've done some political work. He's a doctor. And he has a pretty sizable portfolio over the years investing in like the S&P 500 and stuff like that. And I had this conversation where he's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, well, you can keep doing what you're doing, which is supporting the things that you're against, or you can not support it. And does that mean you're going to make more money for your retirement? No. But should you have a great retirement at the expense of those things? It's the same thing with what happened in 1948. I'm not against, anybody shouldn't be against Jewish people having a safe place to be, but what was the harm that was caused by it having been created? It's all the same thinking process, right? It's all about doing the least amount of harm as you can. We're going to do some harm just surviving like any other being, right? You're going to have to find a way to eat. So that maybe you have to unalive a squirrel or a rabbit, or you have to go find something that comes off a plant. Life is a combination of pain and joy in terms of like nature. It's real. So you're not going to be able to get rid of that. But within that, how do you take the least that you need to get by, right? And not overdo it or pilfer or exploit. That should be our goal, I think, in terms of each other, in terms of the thing in which we live and other beings we share the place with. That's how I feel. And a lot of people say that's ridiculous, that's idealistic, is whatever. Maybe so. Maybe most of this stuff will never happen. But I think that's what we should aspire to. That's my opinion on that. Someone was in the queue and they dropped out while I was yapping. So sorry about that, whoever was waiting there. So anyway, I like talking about ecological stuff more than I like talking about any of this other political stuff, because I think it's the most important thing if you just want to look at it from a selfish standpoint of humans, it's the most important thing we're going to have to face, because we depend, meaning human beings depend on a lot of other things in nature for us to survive. The oceans, the pollinators, the soil quality, the sun, the temperature, the climate, all those things are requirements for us to be able to survive at, just as a mammal. Everyone thinks of humans as this special divine thing that was God-given, that we have the right to do what we want with. The whole thing is it's ours. That's not true. I hate to say it. That's a story. You can believe that story if you want to, but that's somebody made that story up. Somebody created that story on Earth that creates a framework for humans to believe. And therefore, no, do I have enough to retire? Hell no. Listen, I had a lot of money in the market that I could have kept in there. I'd probably be a multimillionaire right now. But I took it out because I don't believe in it, because that's me benefiting from destruction. I don't want to benefit from destruction, right? So listen, a lot of people believe, and this is, by the way, this is the core of a lot of people's religious beliefs. So I'm not trying to demonize your beliefs. If you don't know this, right? Listen, we all have narratives that we play by. Okay, everything's narrative driven. So I like to distinguish. This is a very important distinguishment. This is a different way of viewing things. So if it upsets you, I don't want to pull on the rug you're standing on. But I like to say, if you listen to me long enough, I'm going to say something that's going to upset everybody. It's just the truth. So this is not me denigrating people, okay? Because everybody's entitled to their view, their beliefs. Obviously, we have freedom of religion. You have to respect other people's religious choices, right? I'm all for that. But here's where I deviate, okay? I'm an evidence-based person. You know that from how I talk about everything that I talk about. So I'm naturally skeptical of narratives because they usually tend to serve a purpose of some type for some reason or another. And belief systems are narrative-driven. Let's face it, right? And the Christian narrative is one of God and Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. The Muslim belief system is Allah and the Prophet Muhammad, right? The Jewish belief system is based on the Abrahamic religion, and they don't believe their Messiah hasn't come yet. They're waiting for that to happen, right? And there's Buddhist beliefs and others, all sorts of different ways of viewing the world. But I like to look at what I call biophysical reality. What do we mean by that? What the hell's that? Biophysical reality is what happens, what is and what happens, free of narrative, free of explanation. So we know that human beings are here. We know that there's other beings on the planet. They're here. We know that we have a sky above us with an atmosphere. That's there. Hopefully you believe we're living on a sphere that's part of a solar system. Maybe you don't, but I tend to believe the science on that. We have a sun, obviously. There's a sun, not we have. There is a sun. That's narrative driven, right? We have. There's a sun that provides temperature and energy for photosynthesis to occur, which is the source of all life, right? And then we have all the other elements of the earth. We have the core of the earth, we have the mantle, we have the crust, we have the actual layer that's soil, and we have all the things that propagate. We have the oceans. These things exist. I keep saying we have. That's how drummed in it is to me. So those things exist, right? And they're here. Now, that's objective reality, as far as I understand it, and best I can interpret based on what's been explained to me as I've grown up, and it tends to make sense. I don't think it's a lie. But then there's how people interpret reality. Now, I don't know how it all came to be. That's the big question. That's the billion-dollar question, right? How did it all come to be? I don't know. So some people say it had to have been a creation. So it had to be a creation. In terms of existence and beginning or end, here's my best guess. My best guess is there's a different dimension that we as human beings, having been born on this earth, don't have access to, because we are of and from this particular planet for whatever reason and however life got started. And there's probably other forms of life elsewhere. It's such a big, expansive place, the universe. It's massive. But we're as tied to this planet as grass, as trees, as other primates. We aren't going anywhere. For those of you who believe we're going to be an interstellar species, we're going to colonize other planets, never going to happen. Never going to happen. I will guarantee it. If I could live long enough to prove it out, I would like to, but I can't. But it's never going to happen. We cannot survive in a different gravity environment. We can't. Can't do it. If you look at astronauts that have gone up, plus there's radiation belts that are between the Earth and other celestial things that we can't survive through. You can't do it. This idea that we went through the radiation belt multiple times and had people on the moon, in my opinion, is obscene, is absurd. And there's also other elements of proof around that where there's inconsistencies with communications and stuff, because there's a distance from the moon to the Earth. It's a lot further than you think. It's 295,000 miles away. It's not like right at the sky. It's not like in Earth orbit. Anyway, that's another conversation. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I just don't think it's practical. And look what they're saying now. We lost the technology. We had it in the 60s, but now we lost it. You don't lose technology at NASA. That's absurd. Anyway, so that's just another, peg on the evidence side of a different thing. So, but getting back to biophysical reality, this is really important to understand. And most people don't get this. And by the way, people can disagree with me. That's fine. That's what these conversations are fun. If you want to come up and talk about it, let's talk about it. Again, I'll go through the evidence, and you can decide whether the evidence that I've found makes sense or not. You can make your own interpretation. That's fine. That's why people have takes, right? This is just my take. So, anyway, so getting back to biophysical realities. So as far as how things started, I don't know. As far as how things started, one of the narratives is that God, or the deity of your choice, created it, right? The earth. Now, I don't know how that God relates to all the other things that scientists have perceived are outside the atmosphere of the earth. I don't understand. I don't know if there's much of a story of how that got. Maybe God created that too. And my question is, what was there before that? Like, if you go to that mental place, where is a beginning? Or is there a beginning? Or is it a continuum that's a way that we can't understand because we're from a beginning and end mode? And therefore, we can't perceive something that's greater than beginning and end, because that's what we experience in this world. Everything seems to have a beginning and an end. Even the earth itself, just so you know, is going to have an end where it won't support life, and eventually it's going to be gone. It's going to take a long time for it to happen. But as far as scientists measuring the movement of galaxies, the Andromeda galaxy is going to come into the Milky Way galaxy and it's going to totally destroy it. And this happens, it's very normal. Lifespans of planets and galaxies just go through these processes. It's just like a human life. You're born, you live, you crest, you go down and you die. The same thing with galaxies, same thing with planets, same things with solar systems. It's normal. And so we, meaning us as a part of this process, even if we survive long enough for these things to happen, which is impractical given that most species go extinct all over the place, which we will, we're not going to live anywhere near to see that. The first thing that's going to happen is the sun is expanding, if you don't know. And so the sun is this big ball of hydrogen that's going to expand and eventually what's called go supernova. It's going to explode and then going to be back down to one more thing. That's what the astrophysicists tell us. But it's going to take a long time. But eventually, as it expands, the temperature on the surface is going to increase dramatically, and all the oceans are going to dry up, and there'll be no more surface water. And it's going to be, most life will be gone on the Earth. It's going to be a barren place. It doesn't mean the Earth is going to be gone. It's just not going to, that layer of life we call the biosphere is going to be fried, right? That's going to happen. Now, it's going to take like 800 million years for it to happen or something like that. I don't think it's billions, but you can look it up. I don't know. I don't know all the facts, but I know the general idea. And we can look it up. But the bottom line is that biophysical reality, that's part of it that I can't explain. But I've never met somebody that can explain it other than the story about a deity. But there's no physical proof to prove out the deity other than belief and faith. No one's ever come to me and say, here's proof of the deity, or to anybody else for that matter. And so it's fair to, listen, if something's absent physical evidence, it's fair to at least talk about it, right? Who knows? And maybe you disagree, you think that's blasphemy to question your version, your belief in a narrative that was told by others in the past. That's your choice to feel that way. I just question everything, and I haven't been able to get answers to certain things, and so therefore I have a hard time embracing them, if you will. And that's how I think about everything. So a lot of people have said to me, like, hey, why don't you take a close look at Islam? I think you'd like it. And what I've said to people when they say that is that the principles of most of these belief systems I embrace, things like the Golden Rule and the different legalisms. If you don't know what legalisms are, these are the things that are restrictive or practices that are put in place to provide a better outcome for the culture. I think a lot of those things make a lot of sense. I think in terms of Islam, quite frankly, the fact that women wear clothing to not create this, sort of seductive nature of womanhood and kind of more respect, I think that actually makes a lot of sense. I know it sounds crazy for a Westerner to say that, but modesty is something that's lost in the West, right? For the most part. So, listen, speaking for myself only, men are visual creatures. So if you catch a glimpse of some woman who's attractive, something starts turning in our brain. I don't know what it is. But it is what it is. I guess we're biologically wired to want to procreate because that's how our species gets perpetuated. And so if you see a woman and she's attractive, the first thing that goes to your mind is, hey, I want to get with this woman, right? You're not going to be just a creep about it. It's a spark, right? It's a trigger. And so I think some of those practices reduce or eliminate the triggers, which I think is actually a good thing for men. But nothing's perfect, and men get triggered by other things, and then they do things, and stuff happens behind closed. People are imperfect, right? And we're also have desires, right? So we're always going to be imperfect. But certain societies are more restrictive, probably for reasons that they believe in their culture makes sense to them. People in the West don't embrace those same things for the most part, and therefore, we have a different way of doing things. So, and we have our own problems that come out of that, right? We have addiction, we have all sorts of decay, different types of gender issues that people are now, those things aren't typically as prevalent in other cultures. So there's pros and cons, right? But in terms of understanding all that, somewhere along the way, there were human beings who started to interpret whatever they believed, and they put it in writing and they passed it down, or through verbal stories, right? There was oral and written tradition. And a lot of people who make this argument about the origin of existence and man and whatever else you want to call it, Homo sapiens, they believe that Homo sapiens was made by a deity and then granted special status, and therefore are sacred individuals, and everything else on the earth is subject to the whims of Homo sapiens and the divine creation of man, right? There's a lot of people that believe that, probably many more than don't. And the idea of human supremacy, whether you do it based on a deity-based granting or just in general, it's the number one pervasive belief system on earth, by far. It's not even close. And if you were to ask 10,000 people, are humans superior to other animals? They would say, of course. Right? It's not even a question, right? It doesn't even get questioned ever. But that's not what I believe. And people may say, well, Chip, we can build cities. We can send stuff into space. We are the top of the food chain. How can you possibly think that, right? Right? That makes sense. I can understand that argument. But think of it for a second like this, okay? We are biological entities, right? We're born. We reproduce like a lot of other mammals. Women have a gestation period after they're impregnated. We're born. We live. Hopefully we live a fruitful life. And then eventually our body breaks down and we physically perish. And a lot of people believe that when the human body perishes, there's this inner thing called a soul that moves on to a different realm and has another form of existence for maybe forever. And so, my personal belief, not that I'm trying to denigrate anybody else's, and I hope people don't hate me for this, but I'm always honest with everybody, right? And I try to be respectful in my honesty, but I have to be true. I can't lie to you and tell you I believe something I don't. And that's why I didn't embrace the religion of Christianity, because I don't believe in it. But I like some of the tenets of it and the community of going to church. I like that part of the experience. But when they start talking about some of the stuff about Jesus, and I just can't get my head around it. But I like the things that Jesus said, if indeed the history is accurate. But the caveat is that I see human beings as, I can't explain how we got here or how everything else got here, but best I can tell, nobody else can either as far as proof. But I see human beings as a part of a broader ecological system. And my belief is basically based in ecology and the biosphere than it is based in sort of a divine creation. Because that's what I can see. And maybe I'm wrong about that, and I leave open the belief that I can't prove something doesn't exist or didn't cause this to happen, but I can't prove that it did. So therefore, it's questionable in my mind. And so having faith in it that it did, to me, doesn't make sense other than to relent and do it just to do it. And if I lived in a culture where that was the predominant way of belief, and if you were to speak like I am, you'd be in big trouble, because that's considered a threat to the belief system. And listen, they could be totally right, and I could be totally wrong, and I accept that reality because I don't have proof. But if I had to take a guess, it doesn't seem plausible. And this is one of the reasons why. There are groups of people that believe in their deity, and in this case, God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost in a Christian or Catholic sense. There are those that believe in Islam, and they believe in Allah and the Prophet Muhammad, and that's sort of their ladder of belief going back to 600 BC, or I think it was it 680 or 600 BC? It was one of those two. I think maybe 680 that Islam was first formed. And then you have Judaism. And all these go back to a certain point in time where they originate, right? They're belief systems that originate. And most of them are in writing, mostly by men, the more dominant men in a culture, wrote these traditions and pass them down. Some people make the argument, maybe right or wrong, that religion is a tool to both explain why or how we got here, which is a big question we have, right? That tends to explain it. What we're supposed to do while we're here that might give others some control over behavior, and or what people do or don't do. And then that when you die, what happens? It's very scary, right? We have consciousness right now. That part of us goes away. I think about this once in a while. I don't know if you do, but it seems really unfair or sad that the experience of this thing is going to stop at some point. And what will it be when it stops? Are we going to go somewhere that's good or bad? Are we going to perpetuate in some other form? Does our consciousness stay as it is, but it just goes somewhere else? I don't know all these things, right? But it seems sad that our physical presence has to go. And if our consciousness does go with that, it's like somebody turning off a light switch. And that seems like, that sucks, right? Because I'm enjoying this ride. It's kind of fun. And I don't know what's going to happen next. I want to see what's going to go on. I kind of enjoy all the things about living, right? But it's going to end. And the crazy part is it's ended for everybody else. So it's not fair for us to say it should be different for us. Whatever, it just is. And actually, if you really think about it, that death is actually a very good thing. Not insofar as you want to see people die any earlier than they have to. But if it weren't for death, this cycle that we're in, where there's nutrients being recycled and all these biophysical things that just tend to work, wouldn't work. And in fact, you can even argue that because the human population has grown so much larger than other populations, and this is not the first time this has happened on the planet, that there's an imbalance of those natural systems that is, it's all temporary, right? The Earth's been through all sorts of crazy stuff over the millions of years, hit by asteroids, volcanoes opening up en masse that cause huge temperature increases, or ice ages, all these great fluctuations that come and go, that they don't mess the Earth up, but they do affect the biosphere and the life that can exist on the edges of the Earth, maybe not even down deep, right? And the more we learn, we know less about the oceans than we do about the terrain, because most of the oceans haven't been explored. And there may be life in some forms that we have no clue about that's in different parts of the ocean that we're just learning. And there may be parts underneath the physical ground down in the deep parts that are different too. So we don't know a lot of stuff, right? We're still a lot of question marks. Maybe some of those discoveries will better explain some of this. I don't know. But everybody thinks that their belief system is right and that their take on every issue is correct. Let's be clear. It's you. You've had your experiences. You've had your family. You've had your education system, your culture, the media you've been exposed to, the things you've experienced, the places you've traveled. You've formed a set of beliefs based on all that seem right to you and make sense to you, hopefully. And then you encounter others who have a different path and a different set of beliefs and a different take on issues, right? And a lot of times you think they're wrong because you have to be right because of what you currently believe, right? That's normal. And there are groups of people that believe so strongly in what they believe that they actually don't like other people who don't. They think they're wrong and they think they need to come on their side because they just don't understand. And once they do, life will be better, right? Well, the other people feel the same way about you, your religion, right? They think that they're right, and if you just kind of saw the light on their end, that your life would be better. And that goes on and on and on over history, right? For different reasons and different ethnicities and different religions, all this back and forth. And people have a very hard time live and let live, right? It's live my way and let's live together. Don't want to live my way, you're my enemy, kind of thing. I don't look at it that way. I'm fine with whatever. As long as you don't come at me and try to force me to do something, I'm cool with whatever you want to believe. Not to be dismissive of your beliefs. And I've told you multiple times, your way of believing may be completely right, and I may just not be able to get it, right? That may be my fault. But, that's where I am right now on my journey, and maybe I'll be convinced otherwise if I bump into something, if I read the Quran, maybe I'll embrace it. I've heard a lot of people who have taken the time to do it after years and years of, putting it off or not being, they said it's an amazing experience. It's totally different than what they expect. So I get that. And maybe that'll be the case with me if I do it. So I'm open to it, right? But I still maintain my skepticism about some of these issues we've been bouncing around because they just don't make sense to me. I don't believe in a big bang. Maybe that happened. My question is, what the hell was there before that? And we think beginning and end, and the realm that stuff goes into may be different than our perceptions allow. That's my best guess. So I don't know. But anyway, biophysical reality versus narratives. Just like the narrative in Israel is painted a particular way so that their citizens believe in the supremacy of their state, the importance of maintaining their state at any cost, and all of the beliefs vis-a-vis others that they want to take over in terms of the land and the people. That's what they believe because that's what they've been told based on the narrative. That's been the community message that's been passed down from generation to generation from Zionism. So there's nothing bad about that per se. It's their way of seeing the world and believing. The problem is that it collides with biophysical reality, and it doesn't account for it. So we know what happened. Thank you, Fashion Finest, for supporting the channel. I appreciate that very much. There's biophysical reality of what happened in 1948 and before. People were forcibly displaced from where they lived, right? We know that. We know the history of the Nakba. But the Nakba is not seen as a Nakba from the Israeli side, from the Zionist side. It's seen as a great, they won the war and everyone just left, is what they say. They just fled because they were worried. And some people did flee because they saw the violence taking place to other villages. Like, we got to go before they come to our village. That is fleeing, but there's a reason. It was fleeing because of forcible violence and displacement, right? Not just because they want to just leave for no reason. Well, that's not legitimate. They didn't just leave because they didn't want to stay there. They left because they felt they had to, right? So that's what happened. Physical humans of a different type moved away as a part of that process of formation. Well, they don't look at it that way. They see it differently. So their understanding of what happened is that they just got what they got because God wanted it for them. And they think the rest of it is theirs because of God wanted it. So I have a hard time getting my head around that because I don't necessarily believe that there is a God for any of this stuff or that they had theirs that made a proclamation. It's like humans, same thing. God made humans superior. How? God made this the land of the Jews. How? Right? Same exact application of thought. Where's the proof? Where's the evidence? How can you make that claim? Maybe true. I don't know. They look back at the historical text and say, look, it was in this book at this time under this kingdom. It's got to be so. Yeah, what happened 1,000 years before that? And why is that illegitimate or 1,000 years since then? Why is that illegitimate? And why is that one piece in time with that one small segment of history where they lived there, why is that the one that's accurate? Well, it's not. But they're just saying that it is. So these are interpretations or narratives around biophysical reality that differ. And that's the point I'm trying to make is when you have your belief system, it is an application of narrative to biophysical reality that doesn't necessarily have a guaranteed form of, it's a way of perceiving biophysical reality, not biophysical reality. That's what I'm trying to differentiate. And so, like I said, different people's interpretations may be accurate. I don't know for sure. And everyone will tell you that theirs is who believes their narrative, right? And what I say to people is this. I've seen people who have faith, and what I recognize in them is a calmness and a peace because of how they interact with that narrative. And I think to whatever extent a belief system and a narrative that pervades a certain group and they can have community around it and be in community with each other, help each other to survive the difficulties of the world, I think that's a very good thing. And if it keeps somebody calmer in their day and they feel less stress about their future because they believe that they're going somewhere better after they physically die on Earth, great. It kind of helps them get through their day better or participate in activities like we're seeing in Gaza, where somebody's not afraid to die because if they do, they're going to this much better place. They're martyred, therefore they get rewards after their physical body goes away. You may or may not believe in that. That's what people believe in certain parts of certain cultures. So therefore, it's like a badge of honor to leave this earth under those circumstances. So some people believe that. A lot of people believe that, and I'm not trying to denigrate anybody's beliefs. Okay, I just have a hard time wrapping my head around all of that stuff. But I like the principles of kindness, community, modesty, not overindulgence, do unto others as you want done to yourself, all those things. I think those are great principles. So I'm with the principles. The stories and narratives that explain them, I have a hard time with. That's probably the truth. I say I'm confused. That's the best thing I can say. So people ask me do I believe in God? I believe there's an energy that pervades the universe and the earth that's bigger than human beings that seems to exist in some form. That's the best way I can say it. And I think the way we tap into that is through meditation, calmness, and through psychedelics. Those are the three ways to access a different spiritual plane. That's my best guess. Who knows? Anyway, anybody come up yet? Boy, I've done a lot of talking on my own today. I've talked straight for over an hour and a half and no one else has come in. So does anybody else want to come in? I'd love to have somebody else come in and talk. Especially if you disagree with what I'm saying, because like I said, I am not crazy enough to think that I got it all right. Because I've had places in my life where I thought I had it right then, and I had it all in terms of what I think now. I got it. I'm totally different now. My beliefs are totally different than they were when I was 22, and I thought I had it right then. Right? I know what's going on. And probably what I'll say 5 years from now, which is funny, is that what I said back in January of 2024 was way off. This is now what I've learned. So, it's always that journey, but I don't think that ever ends, right? And I think it's dangerous to say that you're totally set and you're totally right and there's no other answers, right? If you don't leave open the possibility, that's, I think, being a little bit closed-minded, right? And that's not to denigrate you. It just says that's what it is. It's a firm, fixed belief that doesn't waver ever, no matter what. Okay, that's a choice. All right, so people keep asking me about this tunnel thing, New York City and also Texas. I'm going to look at the Texas hotel explosion. Yeah, there's a picture of a Texas hotel that blew up. It was mostly the front of the building that got messed up. Some people were thinking it was a targeted attack. I don't know. There's got to be somebody on here that disagrees with my point of view. Somebody said it in the comments, like, you're wrong, or, you'd be better off believing in this. And that's okay. If somebody wants to come up and share what they feel about that and what their religious journey was and how they got to a point in their life, I think that's interesting to hear. I always like to hear not what do you believe, but what got you to believe what you believe. How did you come to believe that? What people did you learn from? What family experiences you got to? Because anybody can say, I believe something, but how? How'd you get there? And that's always the best question to ask. Yeah, the news said it was a gas leak that exploded in that hotel. They said the kitchen had a gas leak and then it ignited and it caused an explosion. That could be. I mean, it looks like, and by the way, I don't know if you know this, but there have been a lot of bomb scares, bomb threats that have been called in by different groups to different political buildings around the country, saying that they're going to, they have this much loaded in the building and it's going to go off on this date unless you do this or that. So I don't know about that. I know when I was in college and people had an exam date and they wanted to put it off, they would call in threats to a building saying there's something in the basement. I mean, this is crazy. This is back in 1988, 1989. I mean, that's crazy to try to just go take the damn test. If you fail, you fail. Like, don't do that. It's terrible, right? All right, I'm going to answer some more questions. Anybody got any other questions they want to answer? Because some people can talk and talk and talk. I can usually go for, if I change the subject, I can talk about other stuff. But, I don't know where people want me to go with this right now. Somebody says, Bob says, really, really clear, logical, and rational commentary. Thank you. I really try. You can't please everybody no matter what you say, right? I've had people send me literally death threats or that the FBI is going to come out and pick me up and all this other stuff just because I choose to communicate the way that I do. So, yeah, a lot of people make the claim. I didn't use this terminology because I think I don't want to inflame anybody. But a lot of people think, especially in communist societies, they try to remove religion. They think religion is manipulation. Karl Marx said, religion is the opiate of the masses. And so what he means by that is it pacifies people and keeps them calm and uses the understanding of a better life to follow to keep them doing whatever the ownership class or the leaders want done in the interim on earth. And it also explains how we came to be and what happens when you die, which are two big questions that drive us that are just unsolved mysteries, right? So it tries to solve those. But my question is, especially for the Christian religion, I won't go into Islam because I don't know enough about it, but the Christian religion claims that it started about 6,000 years ago, maybe 6,200, whatever the number is. And my question is, obviously the Earth, if you look at just the basics of it, the geology, it's way older than 6,000 years, right? And people still will make the claim. They believe that it's 6,000 years old. I think that's disingenuous and obviously, ridiculously unscientific, but that's what they believe. They're biblical fundamentalists. They interpret the Bible as the truth, and if it's written in the Bible, and then you bring stuff up about stoning your wife and slavery and all this other crazy stuff, and they go, oh, well, that's Old Testament. I'm talking about the New Testament. You can't have it both ways. It either is or it isn't, right? I mean, this is the stuff you get into. I've listened to tons of podcasts about this stuff that, people come up and try to argue this, that, and the other to prove this and prove that, but they never do. They're thinking in their mind that something is proof because they believe it's evidence, but it's not evidentiary. It's a faith-based conclusion that they try to say is evidentiary, and that's obviously kind of absurd. It says Muslims believe millions of years. Okay, interesting. Sweden dark side. I don't know enough about the Islamic faith to talk again, so I don't want to. There's some people that are total jackasses. By the way, I don't know how you feel about this. Guys like Bill Maher, who are just so blatantly anti-Muslim and anti-Islam, simply because there have been radicals that have done things in the last century that he disagrees with, which I think many people disagree with some of the radical Islam. But he paints a broad brush that everybody in Islam is evil, that they're violent, which I think is absurd. And yet he sticks to that. That's why he supports Israel, because he thinks there's a bunch of these crazy Islamic people that just want to unalive Jewish people. And one of his family members, he's half Jewish. So, but again, he would argue to the day as long it's not about Jewish, it's about Islam. He thinks the West is way better with its liberal values and the fact that people who are gay can be allowed to function in gay marriage and stuff like that. He's a firm believer in Western values. He's a single guy by choice, much like I am, but he's what people would call a fornicator. He always has different girlfriends, different partners. He's kind of addicted to sex, I guess. And that's what he does. That's been his life, and he continues to do that. That's Bill Maher. So he drinks, he smokes weed, and he chases women. Now, that may be very satisfying to Bill in terms of the temporal sense, but I think most people who study Islam and who are criticized by Bill, they would point to him and say, your behavior is out of sync with everything that's good about the world. You're doing all the things that are self-serving and not serving towards, a belief that's more important than yourself. I think that's the argument people would say. They probably would say it a little stronger than I just put it, right? But so I can see both sides. Somebody says they found the tunnels by the Chabad. Let me look that up because I don't know what that word means. Tunnels by the Chabad. By the way, I'll just let you all know, one of the emotional gut punches that I keep getting, this is way off topic, back to what we started about. When I'm watching the market and I don't have the courage to get in because I'm afraid of losing, and then it goes right in the direction I thought it was going to go in, like yesterday, the market was up like 65 S&P points, which is the equivalent of making about $3,250 with one contract. And I could have gotten in. I was going to get in and I didn't. And I'm watching the thing go up all day and I'm like, you're such an idiot, man. That happens to me all the time. And so I just struggle with that. And so then you get down on yourself, you beat yourself up, and it's like this negative cycle of behavior, negative self-talk, and then you don't do it again. It's just like, I don't know. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that, but when you get into trading is like the emotional Olympics. It's so hard. It's like your brain is just fighting you every step of the way. It's hard to do. I understand the mechanics of it, but the emotional side of it is just kicking my ass. And that's a flaw in me, right? And they say trading will expose all your flaws. So the good news is I don't care about being right or wrong, right? Which is, we've talked about that as far as politics. That serves you well in trading because if you set your loss at a certain amount and you agree to it ahead of time, and if your trade goes against you, you get out, right? You're okay with being wrong. Well, I'm good at that. So I haven't taken any massive losses. But I've taken enough paper cuts that they've added up to some money, But I don't risk much, which is what you're supposed to do. So anyway, that's my little problem. So getting back to this, though. So yeah, listen, if you believe in Christianity, somebody just age restricted my talk. Did I say something inappropriate that was not okay? Anyway, I must have said some word or something that was age restricted. What did I say? Maybe it was fear? I don't know. Anybody remember what I said? But I think one of the key characteristics, hi Tia, thanks for supporting me. One of the key things is, humility and being humble. The people that are egotistical and go into the market and think they're the man or the woman, you get slammed. You learn very quickly. When I spoke about Bill Maher, maybe I said drinking and smoking, and did I say smoke? I might have said smoking, WEED. I guess maybe I said that. Anyway, I don't know why they get on you for that, but I guess it's drug related. So be it, because kids. But I didn't talk about promoting or enjoying or whatever. But who knows? But hi, Maz. Thanks for being here. Yeah, Maz is such a regular. My mind is, yeah, people's brains can be supercomputers. This is why you can't have a computer do the trading. There's so much to think about, and there's so many variables and so much stuff, and computers just can't make it all work. They do a good bit of high frequency trading, but there's no computer that can beat a human. The best humans in trading are better than computers. But I'm not obviously the best by a huge long shot. But I think in general, being humble in terms of everything, because who really, no one has a monopoly on anything, right? We don't have a monopoly on understanding faith, knowledge, information, relationships. There's no perfect anybody, right? So I looked up the tunnels. It said, why are Shabbat Hasidim digging under New York tunnels? A New York Jewish school, it says here. Let me look at that. This is from a place called the Jewish Chronicle. Three weeks ago, a New York resident started hearing sounds in his walls. Unlike most people who begin to hear sounds, he wasn't imagining it. A group of small agitators were digging a tunnel underneath 770 Eastern Parkway, the global headquarters of Chabad. The tunnels were discovered, and the Chabad movement took steps to close them off. The question is, why were they building these tunnels? I don't even know if they get into that. Anyway, I'll have to read more about it and get back to you on my next live. I don't know. Maybe somebody's read more about it. Anyway, we'll see. But yeah, getting back to that stuff, I mean, like I said before, I go through all sorts of undulations with mood, and every once in a while I'm really dialed in and I can do a lot of stuff. Like I'll be able to go onto social media and just kick ass and take names. But other times not so much. So most of the time, unfortunately. Well, thanks for the kind words. I think, we all have flaws, right? So all we can do is navigate them and try to get the most out of each moment, because all we have is moments, right? That's one thing that's hard to realize. And it's always a good reminder just to try to be present. You ever talk to your dog or your cat, and when they're just present, right? They're not worried about what happened a week ago. They're not worried about they just eat their food and they sleep and they play and they don't think about shit. Like, they're not worried. And that's got to be the way to be, because look how happy they seem, right? So that's easy to say and so easy to forget, right? And get all caught up in the BS and, all the, worrying about your money, or worrying about, what's going to happen with my kid's going to do okay, or whatever you're concerned about. It's so easy to get caught up in that stuff. And then you bring yourself back and you get lost again. You bring yourself back. And that's kind of like the hem and hawing of life, right? Somebody says, what are we talking about? We're bouncing around like my crazy brain does, right? We were just talking about things about investing. We're talking about biophysical reality. We're talking about, and by the way, when I was younger, just to let you know, I used to indulge in things that were illegal, like personal, whatever you want. I don't want to use the term, but I did that stuff, right? Not to a great extent. I wasn't using anything injectable or anything like that, but just stupid stuff. And thankfully, I'm done with all that crap. I don't mess around with that anymore. And I like to be around people who don't. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do any of that crazy stuff. I do take some medication for my Gulf War pain, but it's prescribed. I mean, it doesn't cause any euphoria, but it does help mitigate some of the worst symptoms, and I'm thankful for it. But, there are people who do that. That's a big problem in society. In fact, one of the people who I've been following on Twitter for a long time, her name is Jory Micah. She's great. I mean, she says a lot of what she said. She was falling back into that when her father died, which is horrible. So, and I don't know what her thing of choice was, but that cycle of addiction is real for a lot of people, and it's hard to break out of. All behavior patterns are hard to break out of, whether it's food, sex, gambling, drugs, whatever it may be. This is tough. So I always admire people who are, quote unquote, get clean, or whatever you want to call it. So maybe we have somebody in the queue. Still nobody in the queue. I can't believe we've talked for almost 2 hours and not one person has come up yet. I've never had this happen before. I'm going to see if I can pull somebody up here. Put them on the spot. I think Home Surgeon wanted to get on here and they didn't come in, so I just invited Home Surgeon up. Let me see if they come up. I remember seeing that name in the queue, and I don't think they got to come up. All right. Sweden, you want to come up? Sweden Dark Side, you've done a lot of things as far as sending me messages. I get a lot of people send me videos all the time. All the time. And if you don't mind, tap on my head, please. Tap on it so it gives us a few more of those likes. It's Joe's new account.
Hi, how are
Is this okay? Swedish Dark Side, how you doing?
you? Thank you very much. I'm doing well. Excuse my language, but I would love to explain to you a little bit about Islam, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We believe when God Almighty created Adam, first of all, Islam means submission, surrender to the will of God.
Right.
So that is the beginning. For when God created Adam, so Adam told him, what do you want me to worship? He taught him all the names and everything. And he told him, you submit, you surrender to me. I am the Alpha Omega. I am the Almighty. I am the one. No compare, nothing compared to me.
Okay.
So, okay. So he said, I'm going to send you to earth. But you see, the Satan that you see him in paradise, he's going to go back. He's going down to earth with you. And he will be the enemy till the day of judgment. So Islam believes in all the prophets, all the books that God sent it to Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. And we don't call Abrahamic faith. We call to all the prophets, they were Muslims, surrender to Almighty God. That's the belief, the brief belief of Islam. Now, what's happening in the situation, I believe, it's a religious situation in the Middle East. Has nothing to do with land. Because if you study the Quran and the Bible and the book, the Jewish book, it will really guide you that the whole Middle East is about a religious war. That's what we believe. And it's not just a land, no. Because they believe, the Christians believe, Jesus is coming back. The Muslims believe that Jesus is coming back.
Yeah.
And the Jews, they believe that they are the chosen one. So if you really study, so you will see the whole area is about, it's a religious. It's not about land, it's not about anything else. Yes, of course, there are petrol, there are many things, but the main issue is the belief, is go back to the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran and compare. I advise, and I wish from you, if you really buy the Quran and put side by side the Old Testament and the New Testament and the Quran and compare and see if my words correct or wrong. And then you let me know.
When you say it's all about religion, not land, are you referring to Palestine?
No. The whole Middle East, sir. The whole Middle East. I don't like to go in details. It's very sensitive. But it's mentioned, by the way, in the narration of the Prophet Muhammad. It's mentioned about what's going to happen in the future. 1,440 years ago, it's all written, it's all mentioned in the Quran and in the narration, the Prophet's hadith, means what he says is going to happen in the future.
Okay.
So that's really, if you can get the Quran side by side with the Old Testament, the New Testament, and then once you compare, then go furthermore research about the narrations of the Prophet Muhammad, the future, and why is Jesus coming back? And what is the reason for coming back? And why in Palestine and Damascus area? And you see...
Can I ask you a question? So you sound like somebody who's committed to Islam. Is that correct?
To tell you the truth?
Yeah.
I lived in America for 18 years. I am Arab American. I never knew my religion. I never practiced, really. But when my wife, she had lupus and she was severe, she passed away, we came back to religion because of, sometimes people get something, like an accident that make you go back to religion. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my wife, she suffered for 13 years of lupus. And alhamdulillah, thank God that we returned to the religion. We started learning about religion. By the way, for the last 100 years, out of 400 million Arabs, they don't, maybe 10, 20% they are devoted Muslims, but the rest they are secular, or they don't care, or they don't practice.
Right.
That's the truth. Out of 2 billion Muslims, maybe you don't find even 10% they practice Islam, or maybe 20% or 30%. So I became, I would say, could we call it devoted? Yes, I pray 5 times a day. I go to the masjid, to the mosque as much as I can. Yes, I do that. I came back to religion. But what I was saying, that why the Middle East, why God Almighty has concentrated on the Middle East. Allah Almighty said that every nation, I have sent a prophet for every nation. But he only concentrates on the Middle East. There is a purpose. You see, the message that Islam is holding is the true, it means that I will make it more clear. You see, Allah, God Almighty, before the creation of the heaven and the earth and the human being, he looked at all of us in his knowledge in our hearts. You see, he looked all of us, so he knew this nation, the Jews, for example, they're going to do this and this. He knew about them 50 million years before the creation, or millions and millions. So then he chose some people out of those nations, he chose prophets. And because all the prophets that he chose, they were the chosen one, the best he found, the best heart, the best devoted, the best people that they will really submit to the will of God, they were Arab nation. And if you study, I will tell you very, very important, Sir Chip. You see, the Jews, they were expecting a prophet to come from Mecca, which is Mecca, and from Timan. You see, this prophecy, they were from Moses' time.
Well, I tell you what, we want to get, I appreciate the explanation. What I'd like to do, if you want to, is we'll schedule a time for you to come back on and we'll talk in depth about it, or do a podcast. But unfortunately, because of the format and the timing today, we can't go that deep. Is it okay? I wanted to ask you one quick question before we let the next person come on.
First time I go online, I don't like to go. I'm afraid usually.
Well,
I don't know.
Okay, we can do it like this as a guest, whichever you prefer. But you've been contacting me, so what I'll do is I'll contact you back through the messaging system, and we'll set something up so we can do like a 30-minute, because it's going to take longer, right?
I would love to explain to you on Telegram, if you don't mind, deeply, so you can understand why it's the situation in the middle.
Whatever it may be, we can talk more too. I'm curious to learn. But what I wanted to ask you one last question, and then we're going to get to the next guest. When you heard, I don't know, were you here to hear me speak about what I was saying as far as my understanding? And did you hear that part of today's live?
No, I just come up about a couple, maybe 10.
All right, no problem. We'll talk more about it when we talk offline. So thank you for sharing what you shared. It's been very helpful.
Thank you very much, sir. Sorry for my language.
Oh, you did
I was
great.
a bit nervous first time. I don't do that usually.
No,
Thank you.
Congratulations on coming on. Yeah, it's a big first step to come on and talk in front of a group, right? It's kind of uncomfortable. So glad you broke it out. Okay, Tony's been waiting. Then we have Sven, and then I have to close it up.
Good. Hey, Chip.
Hey there.
How are you?
Pretty good.
So, when I logged on, all I caught was you saying it's the first time nobody's came up, and I think I missed what the topic of discussion was before that. Do you want to fill me in, and I can weigh in on it, or?
Well, we were talking about my understanding of the history of religion versus what I call biophysical reality. So I talked about the fact that each religious interpretation has their narrative, whether it's Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, whatever it may be, and that what's happened and what is on the earth is one thing, and then what people interpret those things as are their religion. So that was the conversation, and what I talked about was that I have a hard time getting into the dimension of how things started, what happens after things end for us physically, and then embracing the belief systems of the various religions, because I'm an evidentiary thinker, and while I can't dispute the reality of what people are sharing, I also can't affirm it or confirm it through evidence.
I understand. Yeah, and you're right. I think your best bet would be, and I don't know where you live, Chip, and I don't know how far you are from your your nearest masjid, which is obviously the place of worship for Muslims. But I think it would benefit and behoove you to stop by there and speak with the imam, and just he can really explain it to you in a way that'll make sense to you.
I'm always happy to listen. I've actually looked up the locations in my area and thought about stopping by.
How far are they?
Oh, it was one within like 15 minutes of where I live. Not a big deal.
Okay. I think, we can all say that we're students of religion, because I don't think that anybody fully comprehends a religion. Everybody's got their take on it, obviously. And, for me, it's the connection with God and how you incorporate that into your life and make it work. With regard to something off the topic of religion,
Yeah, sure.
one thing that I don't understand is, I'm just going to switch over to politics for a second, because I really need some clarification on this. The whole Zio thing is based on the belief that the Israelites are promised, the land of Palestine. But then, when you really think about that, it kind of is contradictory in itself, because most are secular, and what's his name? Oh God,
Herzl.
Herzl didn't believe in God. So,
Right.
Yeah, that on its own, I see as very contradictory. I mean, you're promised a land by a God that you don't believe exists.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that I don't get. With regard to religion and what you were mentioning, am I to assume that you don't have a particular belief system, or?
I was raised in a Christian household till I was about 13 or 14. I was doing my best to try. And after that, I just couldn't wrap my head around it. So my take is well, let me just finish. You asked me what I believe in. I'm a naturalist. So I believe in these sort of the interconnectedness of the things we can get our eyes and ears around on the earth, and the relationship of living beings to the structures that are cyclical on the planet, which people call the biosphere. So I'm a biocentric thinker, not a human or deity-centric thinker.
I get what you're saying. I think, in that aspect, you can apply some type of logic. And the logic that I would just ask that you consider is that with regard to the three Abrahamic religions, you have Moses, peace be upon him, Jesus, peace be upon him, and Muhammad, alayhi salatu wassalam. And you're talking about guys that, three men here, just to name these guys. We can start with Abraham as well. But how could it be, I guess my question would be, that all three, if we're just going to take the first three I mentioned, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, peace be upon them, alayhi salatu wasalam, Sayyidina Muhammad, how could it be that these guys lived like centuries apart or thousands of years apart, and they all referred to the same God, the same angels, the same heaven, and the same hell? So I think, that's a question that, should be answered to yourself first. How do you explain that?
Well, actually, what I said,
no
what I said earlier was, let me answer that. So I said earlier at the time, I have no evidence to refute those beliefs. So the indication that there are different people pointing to the same general thing is a sensible thing to point out to. I don't have any evidence that what they're saying there was actually accurate, even though the fact that three different prophets pointed there is, it's persuasive to some degree. The problem I keep coming back to is I listen to different arguments about this, and none of them have definitive proof in an evidentiary form, other than, I would say, a plausible suggestion to others to consider it as so.
Okay, and faith, I guess, is believing in something that you don't see, or that you can't prove exists, but
Right.
you feel it in your heart. I think that even if I were to say Allah or God or Jesus in some type of way that probably resonates with you. I mean, something, because that's how we're built. I mean, we have that, and this is my belief system. So, we
Sure.
we have, when God created Adam, he breathed from God, the law breathed from his soul. I mean, from his own spirit into Adam. So essentially, they became one and the same. So that connection exists within us. It's undeniable. I mean, if something doesn't
I mean,
move.
but hold on one second. So, I mean, for your perception of what you're sharing, you feel it is undeniable. But to make the statement that in general it is undeniable is not supported by evidence. It's a feeling or a belief or a narrative, not a physical evidence.
Okay. Yeah, like I personally, yeah, I definitely feel a connection whenever we mention a law, whenever
Yeah,
just anything
sure.
about my
Yeah.
religion brings about a connection within me that is just undeniable. I mean, I know what I feel. I can't explain it, but then back,
Yeah,
to the point that's the definition of faith.
sure.
But I
Yeah.
would definitely, just do yourself a favor. I mean, I think all knowledge is good knowledge. Can we agree on that?
Well,
And
yeah, and I think experiences are good too, as far as bumping into different things and seeing how you feel or how you interpret them is always better than not.
absolutely. Well, I wish you not luck, but blessing. I would say on that journey, Chip. You seem like a decent human being, man, and I love you to death, bro. I'm not gonna lie, and I appreciate the support and the platform that you give for Palestinians, man. That's huge, bro. I mean, I wanna, if you could send me your email, man, I want to send to a PO box for you, brother, a kufi or something, so you could support that while you're on these lives, man.
Yeah, I have my email's listed in my link tree at the very bottom. It says email me. So if you go to my link tree, which is in my bio, you'll find my email address.
All right, sounds good, man. I'll get off so somebody else could jump on, man, and good luck with all of that.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for sharing your point of view. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, yes, sir.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so cool to see how people feel strongly towards their beliefs, and I think it's such a comforting thing to most people that they feel that way. I wish I did, and I don't want to be a liar. Right? I want to be honest in my feelings, and I don't want to say one thing to impress or try to, fit in with a group. So I really wish that I felt in my heart what Tony feels, because I think there's got to be something really important in terms of letting go of a lot and letting it be with your God that as you understand it. And I think that's a lot of people feel that towards Jesus. A lot of people feel that towards whatever their belief system is. I don't necessarily have that feeling towards the biophysical reality upon which I sort of feel I fit into. But yeah, there's a couple people in the queue here. Before I'm bringing on Sven, then User, then I'll go a little longer here, then Rethink. And just bear with me. I want to give you the batting order so that you know where you stand. But I do want to let people know, if you don't know who the hell I am, if you're new here, my name is Chip Barnes. I'm an Army veteran, 56-year-old guy, single, never married, live on the East Coast of the U.S., about an hour or so from Washington, D.C. Speaking of D.C., I will be going to the January 13th protest. If anybody else wants to go, there's a link in my bio. It's a group on Telegram called January 13th Protest. Pretty simple. So check that out if you want to coordinate, you want to talk about whatever, travel, meetups, that kind of thing. But I learned about the Israel-Palestine issue when I was 21 years old. So I've been following it for 34, 35 years. It became an interest of mine because I had no idea what the West Bank was or Gaza Strip. And every story that I'd been told was totally different than one of my classmates who gave a presentation on the first Intifada, which was in 1987. So it completely changed my view. And I felt badly that Palestinians were being so exploited by the Israelis and the Zionists. I didn't know. I had no clue, as most Americans probably don't or didn't know until October 7th with what we've seen subsequent. So I do a lot of geopolitics, other issues. Like today we talked about existence and religion. I mean, I just like to get into stuff and talk it out. So my schedule for doing this type of stuff on TikTok, and I'm trying to add Instagram and other platforms, but it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern time. So I'll be on again tomorrow night at 8 p.m. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, like today's Tuesday, from 12 noon until about 2 p.m., we're running a little over today. I try to let the guests get in. Like I said, I have a link tree in my bio. If you like the way that I think and the way that I sort of analyze things, there are a bunch of people that I've learned most of this stuff from. I mean, I don't do any of my own research. I gather, put back together and talk about stuff. So there are groups of people that I follow. I have a list of like 35 or 40 people and a bunch of YouTube channels that I think are as close down the middle as you can get, honest, objective, people aren't paid off. It's on my Twitter account. So if you go to my pinned tweet at the top of my Twitter account, and it's just my name, Chip Barnes. It's also in my link tree, as is my TikTok backup account. And you may say, well, who cares? I have some content that's only on my backup account, which I think you should check out some good videos. But in addition, if we ever lose each other, because nowadays, let's face it, there's some stuff going on at these different social media companies, and you never know how long your welcome is going to stay. I've had it happen 4 times where one day I was on and next day I wasn't, just gone. So having a backup account gives us a place to meet each other in case that happens. So if you please follow my backup account, I'd really appreciate it. Then if I go live again, you'll see me come up instead of me being gone here, right? That's the whole point of that. Also, if you want, there's all sorts of groups I have different social media, different groups, but there's also places where you can help out the cause. I've gone completely full-time doing this, probably foolhardily, and not making much, if any, income. I've had a little bit of donations here, but anything you can give to somebody like me who tries to be fair, tries to be honest, doesn't try to sway things one way or the other. Independent media, like it or love it, it's like it or hate it, these people have to survive. I support a few other people that I like a lot that I can, $5 a month kind of thing. But if you could do that, I have a Patreon, I have Venmo, PayPal, the usual stuff. So if you want to help out, if you're of the means to do so, please do. If you can't, no problem at all. Okay, we got another guest coming on here. It's Sven, then user 448, and then rethink. And then we're going to close down at no later than 2:30. So please try to keep your comments 4 or 5 minutes.
Hello, my brother.
Hello.
I thank you very much for taking me in here. And I also want to say thank you very much for making all those lives. I feel I have learned a lot, and I feel that I have got a lot of thoughts to think about. I usually always put everything aside when you are sending live, so it giving me a lot, and I'm feeling like I am growing mentally by being here with a high quality person like you, which is thoughtful, loving, and caring, and curious about life. And I'm also trying to be curious about life also, and I have a question. Now which you are talking about the pro-Palestinian content, have you been sanctioned in any way except for having your account brought down? Have you got how can I say it? Have you got any threats? Have you got any blackmail or something like that? I'm only asking because I want to learn, and I just want to learn in life. As we walk and we grow, we want to look at the risk around us. So my question is, have you ever got anything like blackmailed or something like that? I know it sounds really tough, but this world is tough, as you know.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So yes, I've been threatened numerous times in the comments of videos. I've had threats that the FBI is going to come out and pick me up and all sorts of stuff like that. People have warned me saying you're going to be a target or whatever. Listen, as I've told people this, I'm pretty sick from the Gulf War, so I struggle a lot of the time. So I almost joke around that if anybody were to get me, it'd be merciful, be like sparing me from my agony. But I'm still putting one foot in front of the other and trying to do what I can. I feel like it's people who have learned about this very fortunately over time. I think we have a responsibility about any issue to speak out if there's an injustice that it needs to be talked about in its totality, so people fully understand it. It's really pathetic in this country how little the American public get exposed to about this issue. It's been a very, very one-sided presentation for many decades. And the only good thing, I say this often, the only good thing to come out of this conflict is for all the suffering and all the death, which is horrific, but it has completely raised awareness around people that had never thought about this or never were aware of it, just like I got introduced to it when I was 21. But there's never been more exposure to people, and they've opened their eyes and hearts, and they support wholeheartedly. They've been lied to for so long, and they're angry that they've been lied to, and they see through the lies now because they're seeing with their own 2 eyes the horrific damage that the Israelis are doing. They're showing their true colors live on social media that millions and millions of people were always kept away from them. And so I did a video saying, do you believe the media or do you believe your own two eyes? That was in the very beginning of this. And I hold with that. That's the good thing. So where it takes us, it depends on the political will of the people to put pressure on the American government. Because right now, the American administration, as you all know, is wholeheartedly behind Israel no matter what, including money, weapons, political support, and military support on all those levels. I did an interview on Turkish TV and I said, it disgusts me as an American to know that our tax dollars, but in just our country in general, is giving all this support to a country doing all these horrible things. They've been doing it for 75 years and before, but they're making it even worse as time goes by. And this is like the ultimate, conclusion of the worst things that have ever been done to Palestinians. It's horrific. First of all, it needs to end a month ago, and aid needs to come in right away. I think the Israelis should have to withdraw from all the settlements, go back to the pre-67 borders, apologize, and help rebuild things with reparations. That's what would be the right thing to do, in my opinion.
Yes, that sounds very interesting. And also in the subject which you came into, which is kind of very, very much related to hidden lobbyism. Do you understand when I say hidden lobbyism?
Well, I mean, there's influences all over the place, both within the business community and in the systems that lobby the government that push a pro-Israel, pro-Zionist narrative and policy, which is inordinate power from a very small number of people. It's really unfair, but the people who have a lot of money and power are able to make the influence because of all the collusion and all the improprieties and all the corruption in our government right now.
That is it. And also, I come from Denmark. Our politicians, they can get hidden payments, and they're not required to say where the payments are from. So there's a lot of big scandals in Denmark where people are getting money, but they don't know where the money is coming from. And it's usually, I'm not kind of into giving the names right-winged or left-winged, but it's usually the right wings that are getting all the money.
Yeah, you're right about that. Well, listen, thank you for coming on. I appreciate your input. It was nice having you on.
Thank you very much for taking me in. Peace be upon you. Take care, my beloved brother.
Thank you. You as well. Okay, really quickly, we have user 448 and Rethink. We have about 12 minutes, so about 5 minutes apiece, please. I'm going to close down. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
Okay, I can. I had my ear plugs and they're not working well.
Okay.
Look, I have not been on TikTok. I don't know TikTok until the past few weeks when I start looking into navigating about what's happening around so on. I ran into your time and I like to contribute occasionally. First, I would like to urge you in your talks or in your chats to promote having the American flag and all of those demonstrations that go out in support of the Palestinians or rather the revoking the genocide in Gaza.
Can I just ask, before you continue, are you saying you want the American flag to be included in the flags that go out to these protests, or you don't want it included?
Exactly. I want it to be in all the protests.
Why is it you feel that's important?
It is important because when you have a bunch of people for what would you call a single issue demonstrations or call, it is a call for that purpose or that cause, but then it is an American people that are calling for it. And you have somebody from Montana or Wausau, Wisconsin, or somebody in Western Texas and say, those guys should go back where they belong. because they are not abreast. They are only seeing what they see in the local media. And so we give the local media and the prawns of the Zionist controlled media, as we all say and know, a cause to say these guys don't belong here. But we are Americans that are calling for this. So it's not somebody else come from other places and enforces their views on America. So it is an American drive. American drive in the past drove all the politicians out of office that were supporting the Vietnam War. No congressman, no politicians would be able to be elected that continues to support the war on Vietnam. And it was all American. So we need to make sure that when a protests for a protest against the policy of Biden's, the current policy of Biden, it still is an American protest. It's still in an American rework of this policy. It's not just a bunch of people just coming into America recently and going around saying that we don't like this, we don't like that. They are Americans. I'm an American. I'm sorry? I lost your audio.
Let me see if I understand you correctly. So you're saying that because of you want people to be considered not just protesters on this one issue, but you want them to be seen as inclusive in the American society so they don't get marginalized. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Very good. You well put.
Okay, so let me throw out a counter argument that some may put out. And I kind of feel some of this. I partially agree with you because I don't want to see people to be marginalized because they're seen as extremists or recent arrivals who aren't inclusive or assimilating in American culture, and therefore they can be pushed aside and people won't, respect the march. But then there are other people that are going to say, listen, the American government and also the American symbolism, even though you might be thinking about the people and their pride in their own country, America has done a lot of bad things around the world for decades and continues to do a bad thing right now with respect to Israel. So by including the American flag, you could be saying that you embrace what America is doing. So it's sending kind of a mixed message. How do you feel about that?
Okay. Well, let me give you De Gaulle of France once said Americans will try all kind of things, make so many mistakes that they eventually come out with the right decision. So yes, we can make mistakes, but we're still American. So it is not a solution that will come from abroad or from other marginalized single issue group. It's an American issue because it affects us. And we as Americans don't want this. We rebuke the genocide. So, but it can't be anti-American. Look, the solution, the final solution for the Israeli-Palestinians dilemma will come out from America. And it will not come out in the next 2, 3 years, 5 years. It's going to take more than maybe 20 some years or more even. But the right thing will still come out from America. I mean, look, Norway, they just had a lawsuit against 3 top ministers and army generals in Norway for war crime and so on and so on. Yes, they're doing it, but it's insignificant. It's insignificant. It is America that will make a difference.
Well, let's remember one thing, okay? America is a country, and of course, from a political and military standpoint, it is the country, let's face it, that's allowing this to continue. The American government could remind Israel very quickly, like Reagan did back when the Israelis wanted to stay in Lebanon, that if you don't stop doing what you're doing, the support we're giving you militarily and financially is gonna go away. Now, I want to point something out. There are people in the chat that are disagreeing with you. Like, I think they more side with what I said a moment ago. I'm not saying I side with either, but I wouldn't bring an American flag to a march. I'm going to be bringing a Palestinian flag to a march, and here's why. I
Well,
disagree. I disagree with your point in one way. The American public is woefully misinformed about so many issues, and they're kept arguing with each other by this false left-right dichotomy.
okay.
And this, by the way, this is just one of dozens of issues that is affected by the imbalance that's been created. And I agree with you, it's going to take time. I do agree with that. By the way, speaking of time, and I want to hear more of what you have to say, but unfortunately, we have guests that are waiting, and I got to kind of close
Okay.
this one out.
That,
You want to say
that'll be
one more thing
fine.
before we close
Look,
out?
good for you. Go for the demonstration on the 13th, Saturday, and hold an American flag saying, I'm an American and I want this to be changed. Okay?
I
Good
appreciate your
for
point of
you.
view. Listen, if you want to bring one, come on out and join us. I'd love to see you there.
I'm unfortunately, I'm outside the United States at this moment. I would have loved to join. And I'm
Yeah,
sure,
maybe.
look,
Are
I
you?
know I have a bunch of my friends that will be at the rally.
Yeah, maybe here's one thought. If you feel strongly about this, which is certainly, I'm glad you are voicing your opinion. Have you considered making a video about it and posting it on TikTok and Instagram so you can try to promote what you think?
I am new to this, and maybe in the next couple of months you will see me. I'll have to invest in the
Yeah, there
time.
YouTube. By the way, there's YouTube videos from 30 seconds. You can figure out how to do it. So I just started 3 months ago.
I know. I also I will have some help from my children
Okay,
they are quite versed with this stuff.
very good. Nice talking with
Okay.
you.
Well, listen. Good luck. Keep it up. Okay. I will be coming back to you. Not right now. It's like 448 now. But I'll be coming back with some name
Yeah.
and we can discuss the last thing
I got a
that
name for you. You can call yourself U.S.
this
flag warrior.
pertains to the discussion about religion. First,
Well, no, right now. Sorry, right now we got to go. Sorry, I can't get into any more of that. Sorry about that, but we can talk about that when you come back in. We got some guests that are waiting. So we had Rethink, and then we have Peace Warrior, and I don't know if I have time to get to much else. I've already gone for 2.5 hours.
Hi, Chip.
Hi.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Sorry for all the conversation, and I really appreciate what you are doing. I'll just be a little bit quick because I was following you and I listened most of the conversation, and I had 2 points that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
But because of time, I'm just going to focus on my second. The first one was when you talked about Christianity and
Okay.
religion and how you don't feel anything about it. That was the point I wanted to address first. But then since everyone is focused on the story of land, I was like, okay, let me just talk about the second point. I have to confess that I'm a Christian. I believe in Christ, and I have a problem because I've studied quite about the Bible. I'm a Bible school teacher in our congregation and stuff, but I have a problem reconciling what I read in the Bible with the conflict which is happening right now. Yeah, the reason being, I see there is some extremism when it comes to this support and conditional support, especially when it's given by Christian, because it really contradicts everything the Bible says. That's number one. Why I say it contradicts everything the Bible says. As Christian, we believe that there is a point I've tried to highlight, the promise that God promised Abraham to be a great nation. That was the first point, which we talk too much in Christianity. Where you see that in Genesis chapter 46, verse 3. This is what it says. I'll just go a little bit fast. It says that God tells Jacob O Israel, to not be afraid and to go to Egypt, because he was going to make him a great nation there. This is a promise which was given to Abraham and then fulfilled. And then God told Jacob that he should go there. But look now, when you read in the Bible, according to that, the fulfillment happened, because when you read in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 22, it says that your fathers went down to Egypt, 70
Can I just,
persons.
I'm sorry, hold on a second. Listen, as far as historical biblical interpretations, this is not really there's other live shows that talk about those sorts of subjects. That's so far down a rabbit hole that I'm not even in, and I don't know enough about it. And not that I don't want you to have the opportunity to speak about it, but there are other venues where that's more appropriate. If you have a general question to ask about, whether the Old Testament, something like that, but getting into the actual scripture and statements, it's a little too deep and a little too specific for this type of audience. So if you have something general you want to say, please do. I think I unmuted you. Sorry if I didn't. It's making me wait 50 seconds. Maybe you can come back soon.
Yes,
There you
yes,
go.
I think you muted me. So what I was trying to say is this, especially for us, for everyone probably who's listening, who's a Christian, they have to go and reread their books, because the issue of the land for me and the support that Christians are giving actually to Israel is simply based on what they believe in the Bible. While the Bible itself is completely clear. That issue was cleared, everything was done, everything that was promised according to the land, it was fulfilled. So what is happening right now, it is just some ideology of Talmudic Zionists and evangelical Zionists who argue on something which they cannot support, even when they use the books that they are using to claim the land which doesn't belong to them. So that is
So
the point I was trying to make.
let me ask you a question to summarize. So are you saying that because of your understanding of your religious text or other religious texts, that the land that is being disputed right now in the conflict rightfully should be given to Israel rather than Palestinians? Or how do you,
According to the text that I read, the land should be given to Palestine.
okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. I wasn't clear what
Yes,
you were saying.
the land belongs to Palestinian, because
Okay,
it's not supported. Like, I read the Bible, I know what I'm saying, and that's why you
I
say
believe
I
you.
can't go through the scriptures, but the scripture is completely clear that everything that happened in the past, it was fulfilled, and the land right now, it doesn't belong to Zionists who are claiming to have the land. It
Okay,
belongs
I
to
agree
the
with that.
people
Yeah.
of that land.
Well, thank you for providing some historical context. That's really good to know. So it backs up what we're saying. Yeah, that's good stuff. It'd be interesting to hear more about the theological side of it. That's more something we would need to do in like a longer form content, like a podcast or something. But if you want to contact me, if you want to have the opportunity, I'm happy to listen because I'm always curious. What I'd love to do is have somebody on who believes in Islam and somebody who believes in Christianity and have like a three-way conversation that's civil. I don't want to get into a screaming match over who's right or wrong because that doesn't go anywhere. Maybe somebody who believes in Judaism and have a quick conversation with each person, get to give like a 2 minute here and then kind of go back and forth and just talk through some of the more important references. I think that'd be interesting. Okay. We have Peace Warrior and then Alejandro, and then we got to finish up. I've been going for over 2.5 hours now. It's an interesting combination, Peace Warrior, right? That's an interesting way to say it. Peace Warrior, you there? Because I'm not getting. I'll tell you what. A lot of times when we can't hear you, what you need to do is to exit TikTok and then come back into the live and come back into the guest queue, and then I can take you on. So if you do that, I'll bring you back in immediately. Okay? But I have to take you off for right now because we can't hear you. Okay, Alejandro, a regular who likes to speak his mind, who thinks that things are all screwed up. I couldn't agree more. What's going on, Alejandro?
This lady that just spoke with you, she's religious, right?
I'm not sure who you're referring to.
Here we go. She reads the Bible, but the Bible is written by 50 prophets. 50. Religion is man-made. That's what they don't understand. So they all got different concepts.
No, I agree
Am
with
I
that.
correct or am I wrong?
I think you hit the nail on the head there. So what is your point though? Do you think that one is correct, none are correct? How do you...
My point is that they talk about prophets and they talk about the Messiah coming to earth. There is no Messiah. You see my point? The
Well, I
Messiah
mean,
came.
hold on a second. So, in terms of your point of view, because I want to be clear, I gave other people
Yeah.
the same sort of response. So, in their point of view, they see that they have prophets as well as deities through which they see the world, and they see that's their faith. So,
And
so there's
yes.
Jesus, and God, there's Muhammad, and by the way, peace be upon them. I know I'm supposed to say that. So, are you saying in your estimation that they either already came or there's no such thing?
There is no such thing. That's what I want people to
Why do you,
understand that. There is no
why,
Messiah.
what is it that makes you believe that? How do you come to believe that?
Um,
And by the way, while you're
well,
saying that, Alejandro, I have to take about a 1 minute break, but keep talking because
yeah.
I can hear you.
Well,
Alejandro, are you there? Because I can only hear a bit of noise.
so if people believe in the Messiah that is coming, he's not coming. Because the only one that came and they had a good idea was Muhammad and Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And they got unalived by the Romans. So who do you guys got coming? I mean, whoever believes in religion. Who do you guys got coming? Yeah, how is it over there? Because it's snowing up the ass here. Shit. Here comes the Messiah. And I always question the fact of religion because religion is man-made, without a doubt. So then I go into evolution, and people don't like that. Do you think that the land of Palestine belongs to Palestine? Because 2200 now, it's been 2200 years. It's not 2000 no more.
The
So
way that I, well, let me
the,
say, you asked me
the,
to, you want me to answer or no?
no, wait a minute. Give me a second. So the land of because it's Palestine. It's PH like Philadelphia.
Philistine.
Philistine. Yes. So they're fighting over a land that they were both thrown into, right? So I think that the Israelites and the Palestinian people, they all got a share in the pie. So you cannot kick nobody out. So the Israelite Zionist government movement that they've been doing, they want to kick everybody out. And wait a minute. So the land, who sold it to you? You know? It's like you trying to kick the Polacks and the Czechoslovakians out of their country. No, they were there already.
Let's say Poles, not Poles.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so let's
Well, you know.
let's answer that for a second. So a lot of people draw from ancient history to try to justify who's the rightful owners of the land, etc. So I think that's an unfair way to do it because you can go back to 4,000 years ago and ask somebody who says that 3,000 years ago it was the kingdom of David and therefore God gave it to a particular group. I think that's a little bit absurd. So, for example, if a Native American right now came to my front door and said, you know what, in 1610, my family lived in this neighborhood, you have to leave, see you later, and they're pointing a gun at me, right? That seems a little bit out of order. Again, it's not fair that my country currently went and unalived a lot of people and my great, wherever that number is, did something. But in essence, all land has happened, but it didn't happen recently. What's happening right now in real time is a dispossession in real time that needs to be rectified because we're better than we used to be now. At least we're supposed to be, right? But as far as that land goes, I go back to about 1775, 1820, 1850 to look at the current history of what's happened. You had the Ottoman Empire, then you had the changeover with World War I. Balfour Declaration, modern history. That's what I'm looking at. So with modern history in mind, we know who was living on the land during modern history, right? No matter how you want to argue how things came in the past 3,000 years ago. If you go back 4,000 years ago, the people who has the DNA from 4,000 years ago who lived on that land, there's more people in the Palestinian group that identify with that historical residency than the mixed European / native people that are Jewish. Let's be straight. That is just reality. Many people who are from Europe that were Jewish were trying to find a place to leave and go to because of all the issues regarding, the way that Jewish people were not assimilating into the culture, came to historic Palestine after being rejected of going different places like the U.S., in fact. So they were assimilated into the territories, and only when it became overwhelming, just like it's happening in the United States. If you have a couple thousand or 5,000 people coming in from Mexico, no big deal. It assimilates. But if you have 500,000, 1.7 million, it gets unmanageable because there's so many people trying to integrate. Same thing happened with Jewish people in Palestine. That's why skirmishes start to happen, because the numbers got so big. And then there was a forceful implementation of an ethnocentric state that forced people off their land. So not only were people welcomed in initially, of course, it got a little bit problematic as the numbers grew, but then they stomped people in the eye based on that welcome, and they kicked them off their land with force. They say they fled, but it wasn't voluntary. If somebody goes to the village down the street and everyone's gone and they've been boom, boom to death, and then you find that out, are you going to stick around and wait for them to come to your door? No, you're going to move, right? That's just common sense. But it wasn't done voluntarily. That's the point we're trying to make here. And the conversation in Israel is they just left. It's our land. They just left. No, that's garbage. So listen, turn the tables around. Like I always say, would you be happy if it happened to you? And if the answer is yes, you're being honest and equal. If the answer is no, you're being disingenuous. And who wants to have somebody take your home and kick you off your land? Nobody. So I don't care if you want to say God gave it to you. Where's the proof? Let me see something. Let me see the memo from God that was written by the Almighty that says that, and then I'll believe you. But I've never seen a memo. You can claim that some ancient book says it. Who wrote the book? Some person, probably some man or group of men, right? It's awfully convenient when you write something that grants you the rights to exploit something or other people or other animals or anything, right? Awfully convenient. And what if their book says the opposite, like the previous caller said, that their interpretation of the Christian Bible says otherwise? Well, which one's right? I don't know. But I think they're both, in my mind, they're both not applicable. What's applicable is biophysical reality, more so than people's narrative interpretations of ancient texts. And so on the ground at that time, the biophysical reality was 750,000 or so human beings who happened to be darker skinned, mostly Muslim Arabs or Arab Muslims, were forced off their land at gunpoint. That's what happened. And the interpretation can be they're moving off of our land because they don't belong there, or the interpretation can be somebody came and kicked us off our land. That was wrong, and therefore that needs to be rectified. I happen to fall in the latter because I tend to identify with the victim. There were victims in this case that were victimized by a more powerful, well-armed force that pushed them off their land. And there was a deep sense of culture and community and administration as if it were a nation state, but it was more like a collection of counties like we have in the United States that didn't have a formal nation state drawn that used to be part of Transjordan and it was administered through the Transjordan, but it was more tribal. And the people in that region, even though they were part of the Jordanian territory, quote unquote, the Jordanians who had control, they were more of a unique type of culture. Just like we have people in the Southwest that are Hispanic Americans, and in the eastern part of Ukraine, you had Russian-speaking Ukrainians. Very similar thing. And that's the way life is. People are not nation state driven. They're clan and tribal based that work in communities together. That's how people normally work. Just like we see with the Sykes-Picot Agreement that drew all the artificial boundaries in the Middle East. Look how many problems it's causing because it wasn't based on the tribal and religious connections. It was based on artificial boundaries drawn by these Western powers to make sure there was perpetual conflict so they could divide and control stuff, right? That's my understanding of all that. So that's my take on that, Alejandro. Do you feel that way or do you feel differently?
Vikings. I always debated this issue. Who discovered America? The Vikings. I've never used Christopher Columbus because the Vikings and Ponce de Leon, from Spain. He also came to the Americas, to the Caribbean, but nobody gives him credit. So if you're a nomad and you establish, a little family, so who gives you the right to kick you out when you came there and made your little hub and you started cooking and you started multiplying your family? Nobody's got the right to kick nobody out. That's where I stand.
No, I
You
agree
know?
with you there. Thank you, Alejandro. I appreciate you coming on today.
Okay.
I know you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, this has been pointed out by many people who live in Israel or supportive of Israel. They say, hey, listen, this has happened forever over the centuries where people have conquered land and taken over, and it's just the way it's been. So why is there all this focus on what's happening with Israel? What's the difference, right? They say you must not like Jewish people because of that. Listen, you have to pick and choose in life what you do. You can't be an expert and focus on every little thing that happens everywhere. You have to kind of put your focus somewhere. It just so happens that right now there's a major conflict blowing up in this area that is worthy of attention. Now, could we talk about what's happening in the Congo? Certainly. What's happening in Ukraine? Certainly. We were talking about that issue because it was more closely connected with the United States and the funding. But there's injustices happening everywhere. So in fairness to those who make that point, they're right about that. However, this one has a strong emotional component to it because of the long-standing nature of it, which has been going on. And for those of us who know more about it, it's been a total disaster, one-sided persecution of another people over decades. And it's gotten worse since the 67 Six-Day War. And it's gotten even worse over the last 10 or 15 years with the incursions into Gaza and all these different operations where they come in and mow the lawn periodically. And they've been steadily but readily putting in more settlements against international law, against even the advice of the Americans. And they just continue to push because they don't care about accountability. They're just going to do whatever the hell they want, and they keep doing it. I find that reprehensible. And people like me who've been advocating on Twitter a year before we started talking about October 7th, go back and look at my history, scroll back through it. You'll see me saying all sorts of things about the Zionist movement and how horrifically bad it is for humanity. And I'm not against Jewish people. Over and over again, the Zionists could be Moroccan, magicians. I could give a shit. It's what they're doing that's harmful. That's what needs to change. And because they have the backing of the United States, the country in which I live, I don't support what our government does in most cases, and I damn well don't support what's happening right now with respect to what's happening in Palestine. But we have very little latitude in our country as constituents to fight back against what our government does. There are some hardcore Zionists and Jewish people who live in America that are brought up under the mindset that the only connection is Zionism and the state of Israel and the protection of Jewish people. That's where they conflate the term. So they say when you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Jewish people. I get that, but there's a misunderstanding there fundamentally because they don't know the full context and they don't see the harm that Zionism has done over the years. They see it as a benefit to Jewish people, and anybody who bashes it is against Jewish people. Nothing could be further from the truth. They make mention of things like the H Group's original charter in 1988, which obviously was horrible in terms of the aspects of wanting to push Jewish people out of the territory and unalive them. And any language around that currently or in the past is bad, is horrific. Totally condemnable. Same thing with people who are supremacist on the Israeli side, who don't care about anybody who's darker skinned or non-Jewish. Same supremacy, same horrific behavior and conversations. There's many of them right now that are saying those things. Itamar Ben-Gvir, that guy Bezalel Smotrich, Benjamin Netanyahu, the guy Galani, the defense minister. These are bad people that say horrible things about the other. They look down on other people. That's reprehensible. But the Zionist movement is undeniably a bad thing. It is disruptive, and in my mind, it's evil. It's based on evil intentions. And if you look at the people who support that movement around the world, there are 17 million or so Jewish people worldwide. Most people don't know that. There's 8 billion humans, and 17 million of which identify as Jewish. That is a very, 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 very small sliver of the total population on the globe. But if you look at the positions of influence, power, and yes, indeed, wealth, that very small sliver of people, and even a very small sliver of them, occupy a lot of these positions of power. So if you look at the global number of who does what, where, and how, and what influence they have, it's undeniable from a mathematical standpoint, not giving any other attributions to it, why, where, when, or how. If it was Somalis that occupied positions of power in the US government and the different industry groups around the world that had the same sort of push for their goals, you wouldn't be hey, why are there so many people who are Somali have all this power? That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, why is it not correct to point out the same thing about a different group that just happens to have a different ethnicity? It's no different. You're just pointing out a fact, a trait, an attribute of society, power dynamics, right? But if you say that, they consider you're a bad person. You're making tropes that are against a certain group of people because you're trying to no, I'm not trying to marginalize them at all. But it is noteworthy, right? I think that's fair to point out without being mean-spirited or racist about it. It's just noteworthy. So therefore, when a country is making certain decisions with respect to supporting policies in the foreign policy realm, it's noteworthy that many of the people in government who happen to be in the positions of making these decisions are embroiled in that same network of power, which makes it more difficult to see if they're fully impartial, right? So I think that's worthy of conversation. And therefore, if something condemnable is happening in terms of the behavior of an actor internationally, and you have people in power, whether they be in industry or in government or both, that support that action because of their other desires, I think that is problematic. And that's the core problem. Then the question is, well, how do you get through that? How do you change that dynamic? We've talked about that for a long time on here. And as I say again, unfortunately, as much as Americans are conditioned to perceive voting as the best path to achieve change or reform within society, unfortunately, because of how the power structure functions right now, there is no clear path through the Democratic and Republican parties for change to occur at any broad level. It is locked up like a master lock, and it's impossible to break into. It's like a bank with a time vault that's shut for the next 50 years. The question is, how do you break through that, right? And it's a combination of the national security state, which is sort of this permanent apparatus that never goes away. Administrations come and go, but you have this permanent sort of three-letter groups and all the administration of those different sort of underbellies of the American empire. And then you have the wealthy class, which is a very small number of high net worth people who donate money to both campaigns directly and indirectly through super PACs. You have special interest lobbyists. You have the constitutionally entrenched attributes, which is corporate personhood and money as speech through Citizens United. And now you need to have a constitutional amendment to overcome some of the major constitutionally enshrined elements that perpetuate these same problems. So how do you get past that? Well, you have to either get a 2/3 vote in the Congress signed by the president, or you have to get a 3/4 majority of the states to ratify a constitutional amendment. Well, if enough of that money is spread around in ways that it makes that difficult or impossible, what are you to do? So the legitimate path to amend the Constitution to break through it on that level is locked up. And the ability to vote people into power that will really make it through the maze and be able to make changes, that is locked up. So what are we to do then, right? What then? I get a lot of that. Well, what then, dude? What's the answer? Well, if you're working in a company and you're not getting the wages or vacation you think you deserve, and there's no union, you start talking to each other, right? You make people aware that a better way is possible. And people say, no way, man, it's never going to work. We can't do anything. A lot of Debbie Downers, right? And again, it's not easy to organize a union. But it's the only option that workers have to use their strength in numbers to try to push back. So eventually, if things get bad enough, they go down the path and the company tries to stop it, as the establishment will when it comes to these same issues. But eventually, if enough people organize, there's going to be leverage that they can bring to bear. And they put money in to cover themselves if they decide to go on strike, which is to take back or remove, their labor from the company, which hurts the company. It puts pressure on the company to change their ways. Same thing's going to have to happen. Imagine if the American power structure, which is all these forces I just lined out, imagine if they're the company, right? And you want the company to change what it's doing. But right now on a one-off basis or even small groups, they're not listening. They ignore you. So then what do? You got to get organized. You got to make people aware that, A, this is the problem. This is what's possible if we can make change. And then you have to go about putting the pressure on to achieve those changes. That's it. That is it. So if you think that voting will make a difference, I'll make this bet. I talked about this earlier. I will bet you any amount of money that if the American public votes in this coming election for congressmen and women, senators, and the presidency, and the votes go through, however they're adjudicated, right, wrong, and different, and the next set of people are in power, whether it's the Biden administration staying on or Trump or whomever else, that nothing in terms of the moneyed class, the defense complex, and all these corporate control systems will get better for the working class people. The working class people will have less, and the establishment will have more, and more money will be allocated to both subsidies for industry and this huge budget for militarism abroad, and more printing of money, which debases the currency, which causes poorer people like us, I mean, I'm not rich, to lose a third to a half of your money of purchasing power. That's what's coming. We have $34 trillion of debt. That's unthinkable. Just the interest alone is like $580 billion a year. That's crazy. And the rates are going up, so the new debt that gets issued is issued at higher rates, and therefore it's even more. Believe me, the American people in the Federal Reserve Bank and the financial class understand all of this. What they're basically doing is they're stashing their money that's losing value in hard assets, so that when the monetary implosion happens, which it's going to come at some point, they have stuff that's going to maintain its value while the rest of the public gets its currency and its paper assets devalued. So listen, if you're somebody who has a big 401k and you think you're doing just fine for retirement, you're not. You have stock. It's a number on a piece of paper. Now, what's physical assets? Well, there's precious metals, there's jewelry, there's land, there's real estate, there's vehicles, anything that's physical that you can trade. Oil is as an asset. It has value. But paper dollars, digital dollars, and digital assets can be completely reformed or even taken, expropriated by the government. You don't own it. So I don't know about you all, but if you don't have something physical, I do. It's stashed away somewhere so nobody can take it from me. I know it's a pain in the ass to have to deal with physical assets. Where are you going to park the truck you're going to buy? How are you going to keep it running? I know a guy that has 20 Ford trucks from 1980 that aren't microchipped, and they're in good shape and they're running, and he plans to sell them to other people to get gold and silver when things go to shit. Pretty smart guy, I think. His name's George Gammon. He has a web page, a website. So people who understand the financial system see this stuff coming. It is coming in one form or another. And the Americans are on the short end of the stick. We're on the tail end of empire. We're late stage capitalism. And the capital class is hoarding every last bit as they run towards the exit. And here we are holding the bag. It's like musical chairs. The music's about to turn off, and there's one chair left, and the capital class has their big fat ass about to plop down on it. And we're going out the door. And that's it. So we as a people have to decide, are we going to take it on the way out the door as the music stops? And we're going to have life is going to get much, much, much more difficult. Or are we going to do something? That's our choice right now. Just like a train that's very heavy, that's going down the tracks, and you can't see the tracks that go over a big ravine because they're 2 miles away, but there's so much weight on all the cars that there's a certain point on the tracks that if you don't apply the brakes way before you see the ravine, you can't stop the train because of its inertia and weight, and it's going to go in the ravine no matter what you do. And we're very close to that point, if not past it already. But what we can do is we can pull some of the heavier cars, disconnect the track to reduce the likelihood that all the cars go into the ravine. That's what we can do. But that's going to take a shitload of work. First, we got to convince people that the train is where it is, which most people don't think it's there. And secondly, we got to do a lot of stuff to be able to get access to the train to disconnect the heavier cars. That's going to be tough. It's going to take a lot of organizing. It's going to take a lot of sacrifice, and it may not work. And most people are not going to leave their lane of safety until they realize they have to. And by the time they realize they have to, the train is too close to the ravine. That's the challenge we're up against. I wish it were different. But if you think that voting at the polls is going to change this stuff, look what happened with Obama. He was the big savior that was going to come in as the first black president, make all these great changes, and what happened? Nothing. He was the drone king. More civilians got unalived under Obama than all the presidents combined before him with weaponry like that. He deported more people than any other president. He bailed out the financial institutions and made them completely whole with no pain and suffering at all. And all that money went on our credit card. Obama oversaw a lot of damage, including Libya and including what happened in Syria and including what happened in Iraq, the second war, and all the problems that were made, and Afghanistan. Right? And they gave him the Nobel Peace Prize. while 2 wars were still going on. The Nobel effing Peace Prize. Are you fucking kidding me? This is how upside down our world is. So anyway, it's 3 o'clock. We've been on for 3 hours. I appreciate everybody being here. Let me just say one last thing to everybody here. First of all, I appreciate you being. If you stayed this whole time, good for you. I know it's a long segment. For those of you just coming on, my name is Chip Barnes. I cover geopolitics. Been covering the Israel-Palestine issue. Been online for 3 months. Enjoy being here a lot. I do work by myself, so I'm completely on my own right now. Some people have agreed to help me a little bit as volunteers, but if you can support my work in any way, shape, or form, if you're somebody of means who's not struggling, I hope you'll donate a little bit. I have a $5 per month Patreon, which is in a link in my bio. It just says Linktree Chip Barnes. If you click on that, scroll to the bottom, it's got different ways you can support me. I've had people make one-time donations on PayPal or Cash App or Venmo, all that normal stuff. But the best thing for me to do is to get small amounts recurring from a lot of people. That's my goal. So I have YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, Twitter, the normal stuff that people have. So those are all linked in my bio if you want to check it out. So it's a work in progress. Again, I'm new, so I don't know much about this, but I'm trying to get help. My goal is to build it out and do it at what's called a cooperative level, where everybody in the company owns the company. So it's not just Chip making a bunch of money, which I don't even care about. So the key is to get the message out to people, hopefully spur some action in a non-violent but effective way that we can achieve some real change rather than butting our heads up against the same wall we've been doing. And by the way, the Trump is not going to save the world. He's not going to come in and, quote, drain the swamp or make America great again or any of that crap. He was lucky to be in a one-time economic cycle where the stock market was at all-time highs and gas prices were low because of international dynamics that he had no control over, by the way. No control over. So the bottom line is, if Trump does come in, I think he's going to get reelected. He's going to have a much more difficult scenario to manage the second time through if he gets in. I think he will. You'll see. It's all cyclical. Presidents have very little control. It's all central bank policy and economic factors around the world that affect commodity prices. It's not about the presidency. Yes, you can cut regulations. And let me remind you, these cut all the regulations out, cut the red tape, and let business run wild to make more money. Look what happened with the train derailment in East Palestine. The rolling back of the requirements for certain braking systems and inspections is what caused that derailment and others that we've seen. And so it's before you clap for Trump and say how great he is, he ordered the assassination of Suleiman, the general in Iran that was loved by the establishment and was a hero for a lot of people in the country. And he ordered the unaliving of that guy, a targeted drone, just like what happened in Beirut recently to one of these senior level H group members by the Israelis. Same thing, a Hellfire missile from a drone. Very effective way to unalive people. 2 journalists in Gaza, the son of that one guy whose whole family got hit a while back, his son and another person got taken out by the same thing, a drone with a Hellfire missile. It's all the same stuff. It's bad. It's bad. So Trump is bragging about the fact that the U.S. occupies a third of Syria, where the oil and wheat production is the highest. And we've been taking oil from them for, several years, just taking it out. So Trump said publicly he's glad we're doing that. So that doesn't make him a good guy. That makes him a thief and a WAR criminal, right? And they're all that way, unfortunately. The only reason he's not welcome at the party is because he's got such a big ego that he pushes back on the intelligence community, and he believes that he rightly believes that the media is, let's put it this way, out of whack. I agree with him there. But he's not a good guy, and he's a billionaire or close to it, and so he cares more about capital, and he understands the system is very corrupt, and he's not some great guy that's going to save America. If you believe that, you are a fool. I hate to say it. But do I think he's better than the Democrats? I don't know. He had less initiation of conflict during his tenure. And I think he tends to get along better with international leaders than our current band of what I call blazing psychopaths. But I don't think there's no good choices. Again, that's why I talk about the third way, the third path. It's going to have to happen, or it's not going to happen, and we're going to get more of the same. So it's, pick your poison, because putting the head in the sand, you're going to get your ass kicked, which is what's been happening. Right. And we all want to think, you get the government or you get the society you deserve. And unfortunately, sometimes you got to break what's happening. Like, look what happened in 1776. People had to go out and do something radical to make a big change so they have autonomy and have to break the problems that are in front of them. It's a different dynamic this time, but with hopefully widespread, peaceful, nonviolent combination of protest, civil disobedience, removal of labor, and a series of demands, things can change peacefully. and have a different set of outcomes that are better for the public. That's the goal. So if that interests you, you want to find out more, if you can go back and do whatever you're doing, stay in your lane, that's fine, that's your choice. But if you care and you want to be involved, there's a link in my bio that says Action for Change, which is the group that's talking about some of this stuff. Again, you got to navigate it carefully, right? I want to get everybody involved, people that are in the National Guard, everybody who cares about the future of the country, because that most people are working people. Let's face it, most of us aren't rich. Most of us don't have, $500 million or even $10 million or even $1 million, right? That's majority of society. So we're going to have to come together or we're going to get broken apart big time. Okay, that's all I got for today. I'll be on again tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. I go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern, and then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday from 12 noon to 2 p.m. We went about an hour over today. Okay, everybody, thanks for being here. For those of you who are supporting me, thanks so much. For those who moderated the chat, I think Maz was here. I don't know if M came in. Thank you for your help. Everybody who supports me by watching my videos or following me, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And more content and more lives to come. Okay, thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.